Good evening, section crew. I'm Andy Dorsch, and welcome back to the second section podcast. Looks like we got some people still firing in. I think I got, looks like we have Tom. Hey, Tom, welcome.
Made it. Yay.
All right. Just in the nick of time.
I get so frustrated with this stuff. I remember when I did my first Zoom call.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a heck of a time getting online for that. But, I kept clicking on the link and it just kept taking me back to instructions. And I knew that's not right. And then Andy sent me of the link. And I don't know what my wife did. She was here helping me, and she clicked on something, and boom, there we are.
Here we are.
All right, can the five of us, before we get going, can the five of us just admit this right away? The girls are generally smarter. I mean, it's just the way it is.
The girls are generally
The girls
smarter.
are typically smarter.
Oh, gosh.
But hey, welcome. Glad you made it, Tom. This is going to be awesome.
Now, is this right? Am I supposed to be seeing like five smaller windows? There.
Yeah, you're going to see five smaller windows, and then tonight. So this is a live stream on our YouTube channel where essentially we're going to just kind of walk through tonight all the fun stuff. We'll have some for our topic discussion. It's all going to be about composing a scene on your model railroad. And then typically we have about 30 to 50 people that are watching the live stream as we go, and they'll be popping in questions and stuff like that. So it's kind of going to be a round robin of content creators tonight, or not content creators, but model railroaders tonight. So again, with me on the show, my co-host, Mike. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. How are you? I've been stoked for this for 2 weeks.
This is going to be a great show. Tonight's topic is composing a scene on your model railroad. This is going to be fantastic. And we're going to have a late joiner this evening, William Sampson from Sue the Milwaukee Road.
Such a diva.
He's such a diva. He is such a diva. He's going to be joining us this evening. And then before we carry on here, I do want to introduce our guest this evening. When I kick the microphone over to you guys, just go ahead and introduce yourself, your model railroading interest. If you have a model railroad that you're working on currently, tell us about that a little bit. And then if you got a website or a YouTube channel or a blog or whatever, if you want to pass that around to the folks online, feel free to do that as well. This is your opportunity to kind of introduce yourself to the second section crew. That's what we call all of our fans that are out there this evening. So, so let's get started with the introduction. So, Alan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. I'm Alan Schroeder. I live in Reedsburg, Wisconsin, which is central part of the state. I have been involved with model trains for about 50 years. Grew up, and one of my sisters and her husband put a 4x8 layout together for me, gave it to me for Christmas one year, and I've been hooked ever since. I had a little bit of a hiatus when I was in high school and college, but got back into it shortly after and got involved with a club out of Waupaca.
Yes.
In that group for several years, grew my skills there a little bit, and had a lot of fun with that group. And then I ended up moving back home to my home area and joined an operating group out of La Crosse called River Rail, and have been involved in that group ever since. I do have a layout. It's based on the Burlington Northern in Montana. I have a Facebook page called BN Marias Pass.
Okay.
And I'll share a little bit more about my layout as I go through what I'm presenting tonight.
Okay, that sounds.
I figured out now where we met. We met over at Arpod's place.
Okay, sure. Yep.
Yeah, that as soon as you said the Waupaca Club, I'm sitting there going, "That's where we met." I'm like, "That we were over at Arpod's."
Yep. I know those guys real well.
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Alan. So we have with us Tom Johnson as well. Tom, why don't you say hello to everyone out there and introduce yourself?
Okay, well, I am Tom Johnson, and and it's an honor being included in the group here.
The honor's ours, man.
Yeah, I think it's shoes on the other foot there.
Yeah.
I'm just an ordinary person, nothing special.
Yeah.
I keep telling people, anybody can do this stuff if you just take the time to research, practice, brainstorm. I think about a lot of the things that I do on my layout when I'm laying in bed at night. I don't know why, things just come to mind when I'm laying there thinking about it. But I remember, I'm sure you guys probably know Jim Six, and Jim and I became really good friends when I was still living in Indiana. And I remember the first time I met him because, here's a guy who's been published like over 350 times.
Wow.
And he got out of the car and, I got down on my knees and I started, doing and he said the same thing. He says, no, he says, I don't want to be treated any differently than anybody else. I said, I'm just an ordinary guy that just shares, things that I know and what I do, what I build and that sort of thing. So I got started probably in 1962, I believe it was. I got my first American Flyer train set. And, it was just a typical oval on a, piece of plywood, but it was great for me. And then later on, worked doing some odd jobs. I saved up some money and got a Lionel train set. It was the one with the Alco PA or FAs on the front end, the Texas Special. And then after that, I got into HO. I had an uncle who was really big into trains. He had this huge American Flyer train set, and he would always set it up in a spare room in the back of my grandma and grandpa's house, which was above a laundromat that my grandparents owned. And there was the apartment they lived in, and then there was an apartment in back that was empty at the time. And he would set that up for all of us kids, family. And I remember that was just so awesome. I would sneak up there and I would find the chest back there in that back room, and I'd open that thing up and take a peek at the trains in there and everything. And he kind of got me started in HO. So I saved up some money sweeping floors and cleaning up the barbershop for my cousin. And
wow.
And I paid like $2.50 a week. And after a few weeks, I had my first Athearn train set. It had the Athearn F unit with the rubber band drive.
Rubber band drive, right?
Yeah. And, I think it had a New York Central Jade Green boxcar and a couple of other cars, caboose, track. Didn't have a transformer. And my mom and dad got me that. They surprised me and told me one day, go look underneath the bed in their bedroom. And I did. And there was a box there, and it was the transformer. And so things started growing from there. When I got into high school, I sold everything. And bought a really cool stereo system with big speakers and stuff. my dorm room at Manchester College, where I attended college. And then when I got married, and about a year after we were married, my wife was still finishing up her senior year. I was in my first year of teaching art at Lincoln Junior High in Plymouth. And I was working in a hobby shop part-time there in Plymouth, 3 days a week. And I was collecting cars and different things. I was bringing them home, putting them together. It's the old Athearn box, shake the box kits.
Yep, right.
And it just started growing from there. And then in 1984, my first article in Craftsman.
Oh, wow.
And that was just a small room like I have here, but it had a little bit of an extension down part of the family room. And then that thing kind of morphed into a bigger shelf layout. And then, we moved here to Florida. A friend by the name of Tommy Fultz bought the entire railroad up in Indiana.
Wow.
Completely tore it off the wall, backdrop and all. Remodeled my entire basement in exchange, plus some cash. and he's inserting it into his much larger Class 1 railroad. So the railroad lives on. My old Indiana Northern layout up there is still alive, but it's in his house now, in his basement, as a part of a much larger railroad. And then we moved to Florida, and no basements here. I had to settle in just a small switching layout in a spare bedroom. But you know what? At my age now, I'm 70 years old, and I can clean my track in less than 5 minutes. I can dust things, vacuum things easily. The wiring is simple. Everything is simple.
Yeah.
I was able to go to town on detail, and that's how I make up, for a smaller railroad. If you have a big railroad with bunches of 10, 15 operators, you got a lot of railroad there to see it operate. But when you have something smaller, you kind of make up for it with the details. And that's what I do. And I'm an retired art teacher, so detail is really important to me in the overall composition as the subject is here for the layout.
Yeah. So I'm actually looking forward to hearing the pros tips here on composition and putting things together. So this is going to be great. So thanks Tom for that introduction. We look forward to the discussion this evening. We're going to move on to our next guest, Tom K. Thomas. Yeah. Tom Klimoski joins us again. Welcome back, Tom K. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing real good. Glad to be back tonight, and glad to see Tom Johnson. I've talked to Tom before, and some of his pictures ended up in my book, which we'll throw out a shameless plug here for the Building the Right Size Layout, which is a book that I recently wrote.
Yeah. I love that book.
And Tom contributed some of the pictures and proved a lot of points, exactly what he was talking about. Smaller layout, you're going to focus a little bit more on the detail, which is some of the things that we're going to talk about. For those that don't know, I have a website. That's probably the easiest way to get a link to my videos and my layout and all that other stuff. And it's just www.thomasklimosky.com. And there you can find all the links and get in touch with me if you'd like. You can see more about my layout, and we'll leave it at that and pass it on to William, because we got a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we got a lot of ground to cover tonight. And just for all the folks out there in the chat tonight, before we get to William, since he's late, we're gonna have to dock him some wages here. But no, since I just want to give a note to all the folks listening to this after the live stream. We are going to have links to Tom, William, Alan's social Facebook groups and websites and pages and all that. I'll have that all in the show notes so you guys can go and find it later. So now that we got the stage and the lighting set up for William, welcome back, William Sampson.
Well, thank you guys. As always, it's great to chat with you. And, it's an all-star cast, so I'm kind of wondering what I'm doing here. But collectively, I see all of your guys' work, and it's cool and it's inspiring. And obviously, I'm going to guess that some people might be inspired by the stuff that I do. But in reality, I think, Tom and Tom both kind of even alluded to is that it is kind of just about, it's learning. It's a learning process. And, I know, Tom, you were originally a teacher. Well, we all indirectly are kind of teaching, but I got to say, mad respect for the work that you do. It's cool to see, and a lot of inspiration from each and every one of you in your own ways.
Thank you.
Thanks, William, for that intro and the kind of the setup here for tonight's discussion. So we got about 50 people in the chat tonight. So feel free, chat. Go ahead, ask us questions. So we're gonna walk through each person's take on composing a scene on your model railroad. So again, just let's keep the discussion model railroad related. I don't want to have Mike or myself boot you out. That would be terrible.
We know where all of you live.
And we know where all of you live on YouTube. That's right. And again, if you guys have questions, comments, please fire them up. The panel tonight is going to be more than willing to help out. So topics this evening, we're going to start with Alan. And then, the other, we're going to talk about Alan's Burlington Northern layout. Then we'll go over to Tom J and then Tom K. So if you want to direct a question in the chat to either Tom Johnson or Tom Klimoski, just make sure you add their last name or last initial on there so I can direct that to them in the chat. And then William and Mike will add some content at the end as well. And I got a whole host of questions that's right. I took show notes tonight, prepared. So, so I'll be the MC of the circus tonight and keep things going, and we'll get started here. So, just want to talk about some folks in the chat. We got Otter Creek, Rio Grande here. David Winters here. Heath from Humanity Junction is here this evening. Let's see here. SoCo Olds, 455. Roger Moses. C&W Mondovi line is here. Gary Lenz, and quite a few others. Scott McPherson. I think I saw Justin in here as well tonight. Robert Thomas. So if you're out there, give us a shout in the chat. And then, as always, feel free to ask questions. And so, Alan, since you're the new guy to the crew tonight, we put you in the hot seat. So I'm going to go ahead and bring your slides up, if that's cool, and then I'll let you take her away.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, so the topic kind of hit a chord with me. I really enjoy the scenery part of building a layout, and I've had 3 layouts in my life, and this is the only one that's gotten to the scenery stage. So it's been, like Tom said, a learning experience, and I've learned a lot over the course of the years. And hopefully the scenes that I'm creating display that. So with that, I'll start. So the area I'm modeling is called Marias Pass, western Montana. The draw is that it's got mountains, it's got tunnels, it's got rivers, it's got bridges, it's got a lot of things that make scenery kind of the fun thing to do. And I'm not into modeling big towns and a lot of buildings. I'm into modeling in the middle of nowhere. I mean, that's my draw. It's northern at that time, and this is the type of scenery that is out there.
Wow, it's big time scene there.
Again, rivers, mountains, tunnels, and trains. Good combination.
Yeah.
So how big of a house do you have that you've got this all fit in it?
Well, yeah, good one. if only my layout looked like that. So to talk a little bit about the layout, I'm modeling the Burlington Northern in 1990. The layout is about 1,000 square feet, and my main line is about 700 feet long. It is a mushroom design, so I've got some areas that are over the top of other areas, and I've got a picture or two that kind of show that.
Okay.
My road bed is drywall and extruded foam, so it's a little different. There's several layouts in the Riverdale group that have gone that way, either with camper tape or foam for the actual road bed, but the sub road bed is drywall. I've got a lot of turnouts on the layout, and my friend Randy Doman built 99.9% of them. They're fast tracks turnouts that he built for me. They're super awesome. They're smooth and flawless.
Yeah,
appreciate that. Atlas Code A3, some microengineering 70 and 55 thrown in just for yards and spurs, that type of thing. I have CATS JMRI signaling with all Digitrax components driving it, and I have the Digitrax Simplex for controls. few pictures of the layout. That's my main glass yard, whitefish yard. We start a lot of locals out of there and run a lot of cars. I have another yard called Columbia Falls. It's a smaller yard. Footboard yard master, does a lot of industry switching, that type of thing. And my third yard is Cut Bank, which is served by a local coming out of Havre, which is staging. If you look behind the two guys where the pine trees are, that's the summit of Marias Pass. And underneath that is this scene. So, this is the mushroom part of the layout. So that's where I'm at with my layout.
So Alan, okay. Can we there's a couple of questions that came in from the chat, and I apologize for jumping in here, but I have one up on screen from Heath.
Okay.
And this is free to anyone on the panel to answer, but Alan, we'll give you the first crack at it. So when composing the scene here, and maybe you'll answer it in the slides going forward, but do you think about what it would look like through a camera, or do you have something else that you would use as criteria?
Well, for me, it's more of a, higher level view. Okay. Because I'm modeling vastness, I'm looking for more of that. And if it takes a good picture, that's kind of the bonus to it. But I'm not setting the camera up and looking at it when I'm actually doing the modeling. That for me, that's the afterthought.
Okay. Tom K or Tom J, do you have any thoughts on that question there from Heath before we get back to Alan?
I do like to look at my scenes with my iPhone when I set them up. For example, when I blend my roads into my backdrop, I try to have all of the lights on in my room that I will always have on when trying to do all of that blending, because I found that if you add more light or less light, then that changes everything. But I also look at it through my iPhone. And if I see that the color of the road in the backdrop is slightly off from the color of the road that I modeled, then I go back and I work on it and I fix it. So everything looks as good in the camera as it does in life. And the camera will pick up some things that the naked eye will not always see. And then, of course, when I look at the layout through my camera, I kind of bracket everything and kind of look at everything and try to notice if there's something that I can do to balance the scene a little better.
Okay.
I'm looking at this from an artist standpoint, probably. I know that things in nature exist however they exist. I mean, there's nobody going around saying, well, we got to add this or that because that doesn't look right. But when we model our railroads, I think we tend to want to do that more.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Anyone else before we let Alan move on here?
Yeah, I'm much like Tom. I was going to say,
Tom.
Excuse me. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm much like Tom. I look through the camera to kind of see how the scene's coming together, and I use that a little bit to compose the scenes. Okay. And like you said, a lot of things will show up in a camera view that you don't normally see, and you can put the camera in places on your layout that you don't normally get when you're just looking at it from the aisle or whatever, which will help you with your modeling.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and Tom Johnson, you alluded to looking at it as an artist, and I think what a lot of times we as artists, I'm a graphic designer by trade, so my schooling has taught me a lot of that stuff structurally. Look at it by rule of thirds, and if you remember your high school photography classes at all, that rule of thirds is just cutting up your screen into 9 basically square pieces. And you want to look at the crosshairs where you cut up those 9 pieces and kind of set a composition. And I guess I would say artists look at actual, whether it's photography, and I think, Alan, you kind of alluded to, you're more of a pullback scene kind of a guy. And it's not to say that you're not naturally capturing it, because you are. You look at vanishing points and how you're setting up a shot that is pleasing to the eye, because you kind of said, well, I take a picture and I just kind of look at it and does it look good? Well, yeah, if it looks good, there's kind of some reasons why. And I think we all collectively are doing it. And you guys, even in the podcast world, are doing it when you're putting together your videos. But really think about like an artist. Look at what, it seems cliche, but what Da Vinci was doing, and looking at what other fine artists do, because they were setting up compositions too. And we can do that with our railroad, with foreground, middle ground, background, rule of thirds, and just some of that type of stuff. Your iPhone, these guys both mentioned their iPhone. You can have a grid, or you turn it on, and when you look at it, the rule of third lines can be turned on your phone, and that can be seen, and that can help you take a picture if it's railroading or even just family photos.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Sorry for the interjection there, Alan. I just wanted to make sure that we were getting that question from the studio audience here answered. Heath, your $20 is in the mail. Thanks for that. To get us started.
That was a good question, because we all approach it a little differently, and so understanding that is a good question to have up front. So
yeah,
outstanding. And see, for me, I'm completely in a different camp than the other 5 of you, because I'm in a larger scale. So everything is much more defined for me compared to HO scale. I don't have the luxury of being able to maybe get away with a few things because they're going to be right in the forefront. And with me having a shelf layout that's in S scale that's only 11 inches wide, that makes it even harder. Angles really start to play into things, and I've got some pictures I'll show later of my canning company scene that I started to compose. But it's the angles of the track were the first thing that I considered, because of the fact that of the way the layout is actually set. So it's just, I don't know. Like you said, Alan, everybody approaches it just a little bit different, So
yeah. All right, Alan, let's tune it back to you here.
All right. So I'm going to talk about one specific scene on my layout, and it's called Stanton Creek. And when I started thinking about the process of creating that scene, I had a vision, and I wanted it to be an attention-getting scene, because it's the first thing you see when you walk in the door of the train room. And I wanted that scene to kind of set the tone for what the layout is about. And one of my goals was to convey the essence of Mariah's Pass, but not necessarily model it exactly as it is in real life. I mean, I can't do it inch for inch, but I wanted to convey the essence of the area. And additionally, I was going to learn some things along the way, because this is my first go at it. And there's going to be some bumps, and there's going to be some do-overs, but I mean, that was going to be part of the whole process. And I recognize that. So this is the scene. When you enter the train room, that's the scene I'm going to talk about. And here's how it started.
Oh my.
So
the infamous helix round.
Yeah, look at that helix.
The helix.
The helix.
And it was right there where everybody could see it. So I needed to do something to hide it. And so I had a plan. When I planned the layout, I had this kind of all planned in there. And so obviously the albatross in the room was this 11-turn helix. And I needed that helix because I wanted the layout to be a continuous loop, a continuous run.
Yep.
So when I'm testing things or whatever, the trains can go. And so part of it is hiding that. And so I've got this where the clamps are on the drywall roadbed there. That's where the bridge is going to be, and that's connecting, or the last part of the first level of the layout, and it actually goes into the helix for 4 turns and then comes out in the second level. So for portions of that helix, there's 3 tracks wide.
Wow.
So a little farther down in the process, here's the progress. So the helix is gone. Some basic shapes are taking shape, and the layout to me was presentable to operators at this point. And it's sat this way for a couple years. My scenery base is what Joe Fugate had in his video series with the cardboard strips, the masking tape, and the mud that he put over the top. And so that was what I was going to use, and that's what I did use in my scenery. Again, just another shot, gives you the basic landforms. The drywall, I support it in the middle, but it really, keeps its shape if it's sealed up with paint. And trains ran across that for a couple of years, no issues.
Wow.
Then I tried to paint the backdrop, and having an artist in the group tonight, I'm sure he's thinking, man, that kid's got a long ways to go. And I recognize that too. But I didn't like the blue, so I wanted some green on there, and that's what I got. And it was that way for a while, until I could hone my skills. But that's the layout. That's my layout. That's my backdrop, and it is what it is until I could fix it. And again, it was in that mode for a couple of years, just ugly green and grays. But then we started taking shape. We started adding the piers and the girders, and had to engineer all that, which for me was a big step because I had never really done any bridges like this in the past. My bridge building was basically putting a kit together for the directions. This wasn't that. This was trying to figure out how I could get the piers to work, how to get the right depth of the piers and make it look right for the scene. And it took some trial and error. Took me a while to get it built, but I think it fits the scene well. Probably if there's an engineer in the group, they'll say, "Well, that's not right." But for me, it looks right.
Did you physically go out to Stanton Creek to try to photograph it at all, or are you working strictly off of photographs at this point, or?
The only photograph I could find of Stanton Creek was the very first one in my presentation. And Stanton Creek didn't really look like this. It kind of resembles it, but not really. And today, there's no bridge there. It's all filled in. It's got culverts.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. So today, it doesn't even look like this.
Unbelievable. So there was a question a little ways back up the chain. James asked. He said, "How do you balance a big, deep scene while keeping the layout accessible for maintenance?" And this was one of the questions that I had that I wanted to ask you, Alan. Was when composing this scene, or composing the scenes on your layout, how did you, I guess, factor in keeping the track clean and wiring and those types of things?
Well, the wiring was simple. I mean, I ran it under right from the start, so I didn't have to deal with it. I've got feeders on both ends of the bridge, so
right.
I don't have an electrical issue. Because the roadbed or the sub-road bed is drywall, I left the drywall there, and the bridge girder is just attached to the side of it.
Sure.
And so structurally, the track stayed there, and it continues to be the same track that was on the bridge when I first built the layout.
Okay.
So I could maintain operations without any issue. As I do other scenery areas, I protect the track with masking tape. That's really it. And just everything stays where it's at. I maybe will be shut down for a while between operating sessions to work on the layout, and then clean everything up and let's go at it again.
Yeah, for sure. For
So,
sure.
So it wasn't really an issue to to be able to operate and build, I guess.
That's excellent. I guess that really answers the question of when, composing that scene or thinking about it, the maintenance is it's a pretty significant part, but it looks like you kind of have it handled. So, okay. So I'll let you carry on here with
Okay.
the backdrop redo here.
Yep. So you can see I kind of fixed my backdrop, and
Yeah.
I started watching Bob Ross videos. I started taking pictures of other people's backdrops that were painted and trying to mimic that. And so that's really how I improved my skill. It was just a matter of trying something. And some of it's been going over a second time and a third time, but I think as long as I feel I'm progressing to the better, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, Justin also says he watches Bob Ross. I've watched Bob Ross too on learning how to hand paint my backdrops. That blending technique that he does for the sky is something that I just love to do.
He definitely was a talent. So obviously I kept working and added the river or the creek in this case on the details along it.
Oh, wow.
Progressing the scene a little bit. And then I added my mud, my scenery mud. And again, it's the Joe Fugit vermiculite patching plaster Portland cement mix. I throw in a little black powdered paint to make it a little darker. And then, the technique for finishing it is just white painting on some diluted. I use black paint, and that gives it a gray color. And then I zip texture it and add my other scenery materials, static grass, ground foam, etc. And we keep adding a little bit more.
Yep.
Here I've got the trees added, the static grass, the ground foam. It just took another step, one step at a time. Try to blend in the backdrop with the foreground. Try to get the colors right. I think one of the things that Joe Fugit said in his video is color and texture. If you can take a picture of your scene, whether it's color or black and white, which one looks better? If the black and white looks better, then you probably don't have the right colors and textures. And so I kind of keep that in mind, even though I don't really take pictures of it while I'm building it. When I'm done, I kind of look at it and say, does it look right? Does it fit?
Yeah, that's.
So the next step, obviously, is pouring the river, getting the river colored. And I had 2 or 3 or 4 iterations here. I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to finish the riverbed or the creek bed. I put down a bunch of stones and that doesn't look right. Pulled them back up, and then I painted on the blue, and then I kind of painted gray stones just with paint. I thought that'll work, and then I poured the water, and I used the Woodland Scenics deep pour water.
Yeah,
it's a good product. You can tint it, so I could tint it to the color of my background, blue.
Yep.
And that's how she turned out. The bad part about it is that stuff will find every hole in your front. And so I've got a puddle of epoxy on my floor where it dripped down. It is what it is. I thought I had it sealed, but not good enough.
Yep. So there, before we and this is kind of a bit to to the leaking of the pour here, but Heath comes back with another question. Thanks again, Heath. It says, what are your thoughts on fascia when composing a scene, and how integral is it to the scene? So I noticed that you have a fairly dark colored fascia wrapping around this scene here, and really sets the contours nicely. What are your thoughts on the fascia here, and is it really that important?
Well, I think it is. For me, the fascia was one of the first things that was put up after the track was laid, because I wanted to get a feel for what the landform was going to look like, whether it's this scene or any other scene.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to have that fascia in place so that I knew, where the ridges were, where the cuts were going to be, where the bridges are going to be. And so that was an important part of it. And for me, I wanted a dark contrasting fascia, and to help get your eye to the layout, not to the fascia.
Yeah, right.
I think it helps that. I also painted my room black. The ceiling is black. Anything that's not layout is black, and I think that helps keep your eye on the layout versus everything else. The bad part about that is it sucks up a lot of light, and so when I first was building in here, my lights were a lot brighter, it seemed, or the room was a lot brighter.
Yep.
But as I added layout lighting, that issue went away.
Yeah, certainly. Outstanding. Okay.
So this scene, or this slide, shows a more completed scene. It's not quite there, but it's getting there. And having a train in the scene helps, kind of set it.
Yeah, right.
And here I've added more details, more underbrush, or more texture to the grass. And I think at this point the scene is considered done. I may come back at a later time and spruce it up a little bit, but for the most part, I feel this scene is complete. I've weathered the bridge and piers.
Yes.
I've done everything I feel I need to at this point.
Okay. So, Alan, that was really, really good.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I just want to, let's maybe just kind of focus in on this. So I've had the privilege to go over and operate on Alan's layout, and this is the first scene when you walk in the room and that you see is this bridge scene. And I know what it did for me when I walked in. It just was that immediate wow factor. But I've seen a couple of comments here. Looks like Dan Dyer put a comment out. When you walk in and see that scene, you're in mountain model railroading. And I think that comment there really just kind of says it all. I mean, I think it's fantastic. Tom, William, Mike, any questions, comments for Alan here on the process that he's gone through, and what he's shown so far?
Well, he answered the question about the fascia, and I've been in many discussions over the years about fascia, and I understand how you would want something that would kind of blend into your scenery, or something that won't stand out. In my case here, I approached it entirely differently. Our house here in Florida has a lot of white crown molding around the ceiling, floor. All the windows are white, doors are white, cabinet, everything. Okay, and I had to decide: do I want my room to blend in with the railroad, or do I want it to blend in with the house? And in my case, I chose the house.
Sure.
So my fascia is white, and I've got white trim around the top of my backdrop. And I have tables in here I put together from IKEA that are white, and I have cabinets I keep all of my rolling stock in that are white. So that's the approach I took. I kind of went for the overall house, the looks of the house, and not so much the layout. But to me, either way works. It's just what I prefer in this case. Now, back in Indiana, my layout back there, my fascia was kind of it was kind of an olive green, and it blended in quite well with the scenery. But the basement in my house back in Indiana had paneling and it was dark.
Yeah.
So anything goes in terms of trim and whatever in the house. But here it was different.
Sure. So before we go back to the panel here, Jeff, the railroad enthusiast, has a question of, and I think this was mentioned earlier, but this is for Alan. What is the time frame for something of this size? How long does it take to get looking like this? So what was the time frame altogether just to put this scene?
Okay, so the layout build was started in 2011, but I really started focusing on the scene. It was probably in 2020, early 2020, and it took me about 2 months.
Sure.
To go from that ugly backdrop and just tape terrain to a finished product.
Wow. That's so there's a bunch of people in the chat saying, "Oh, it just took a long weekend or a couple hours." But so I mean, it was some dedication to get this going to the state that it's in. I mean, again, Tom or William, Tom K or William, did you have any comments, questions for Alan here before we move along?
I would just say just a real brief thing about the fascia, and this goes to photography. I've got 15 years of photography in my back pocket, so I'm familiar with how light moves around the room. I really like in the fact that Alan went to the darker tone. That darker tone absorbs the light. You don't get this bounce if you're using flash or if you're using some lights to be able to illuminate your scene. It helps actually kind of draw, obviously, the attention into the space. But it's just nice. It's very nicely executed. And I think a lot of times people, when you look at your fascia, I have orange and black as the color scheme of the Milwaukee Road. I actually entertained the idea of incorporating orange or black into the fascia, and it's loud and distracting. So I go away from it, and like Tom Johnson said, using whether it's trim or molding or something to be able to bring it into the room. If you've seen my railroad, it's built on bookcases, and that whole integration, it's actually the railroad is becoming a part of the furniture in the space. But like Tom Klimoski, as you can see behind him, he's gone to kind of that olive drab and, that tone. Is that in the photography world? I'm going to throw it to you here, Tom Klimoski. Your choice in your fascia, what got you to that color? I mean, you're kind of similar of a tone that Alan's got, but what brought you to the green?
It works well with the scenery. Again, I'm modeling Georgia, so there's a lot of green, especially in the time frame that I'm modeling, which is spring, early summer. Also, it kind of helped that this green is also the same green that we have in the rest of the basement, which is an adjoining room. So it kind of worked out. And then I painted everything from the layout height all the way down the green, and then everything from the layout above is sky blue, even including the ceiling. So that really helped lighten up the space. Again, I have a small room, so I'm looking at things from a different standpoint. I didn't put any balance over it because I wanted a little bit more open feeling in the room rather than being so closed in, because it's a 9'2" by 10'6" room. So you don't want to start closing it down because then it would get a little claustrophobic. So those are some of the reasons. And I think it just kind of from the fascia level down, it just kind of blends in because I have some shelves and some storage areas and stuff like that. So it allows you to focus on the layout and it kind of blends it. One of the biggest things is actually having a fascia. A lot of people have a layout and they never get around to putting a fascia on it. That really helps finish it off. That was one of the first things, and I think some other people commented too. One of the first things I did was I came up with the fascia and got the contours for the stream areas and things like that. And it really helped the layout look a lot more finished, even though like Alan was showing where it was still doing rough scenery and that kind of stuff. But having a fascia on there made it look a lot more finished. So I would put a little more emphasis on putting a fascia on rather than waiting till later, because it helps the layout look better when people come to view it and operate on it.
Sure.
And what are your guys' thoughts on the dark tone though? Like, just I know somebody in the chat there commented about preferring the black because it's theatrical, and you give that theatrical scene. What is your guys' take to the dark tone versus? I had a railroad that it was white. Mine, I'm going to white. Tom Johnson, you're kind of the lighter tone. Do you guys have a preference to that theatrical look or that dark experience as far as the fascia or even the surrounding environment?
I think it depends on the layout, because if I was doing a Western Arizona layout, I'd probably go with sand color versus black. So I think it really depends on the colors of the materials that are on the layout as well.
Yeah.
No, I have a couple of pictures that I'm cheating on Tom Johnson because I went back and I found some that he sent me. Tom, do you mind if I put these pictures up here quick?
Hey, that's quite okay. I was just going to make a comment that I knew we were going to be discussing things. I didn't realize that we were going to be sharing pictures, and I didn't have anything prepared.
Well, careful, Tom. It could be you on your vacation or you on the beach. So he didn't tell us what photos of.
But go ahead. But then I'm going to have some questions about how I can share some photos with you guys
just
for my photo program.
Here's
the one I was looking for.
Yeah, I scrolled back in our conversation from a few months ago and I found this one. So it just reminded. I knew you sent me a picture of it, but this is a pretty. The one thing that I take away from this more than anything is the fact that his backdrop is framed as well on the top. He's got the top of his backdrop is finished, so above his layout, this is all usable space up here. So, you've got, how much room do you have above your backdrop there, Tom? About what?
I would say that's probably almost 2 feet.
About 24 inches?
Yeah.
So, you could actually put signage up there or memorabilia or whatever you wanted to up there.
Yes.
And so now with your backdrop being the height that it is, are you limiting, I know we're talking about fascia, but does that also help to limit the size of your structures? I suppose we'll get to that, but I mean,
well, my layout back in Indiana, this backdrop that you're looking at here is 24 inches tall. I had some backdrop back in Indiana that was only 16 inches tall, and one small section of the layout it was only 12. And one of the things that I wanted to do down here, I wanted to use my wall. You could see that the wall is painted blue. I wanted to use my wall as my backdrop, and I was going to paint clouds or just leave it blue. But the problem is every house down here in Florida has this darn orange peel effect, this rough texture, and it just didn't work for me. So I had to go with the masonite route, and I decided this time I was going to go a solid 24 inches because it gives me a lot more room above my tallest elevator now. So when I take photos, I don't have to do Photoshop work to crop out the darn trim, and all that stuff. My trim at the top hardly ever shows up in my photos, unless I'm taking a picture from an extreme angle. And then I've only got maybe one small corner of the photo that I have to Photoshop out. And some people tell me, no, I want to see it, so in some photos I take now, I leave the fascia in, I leave the everything in, so people could actually see what the room looks like. They could see how narrow the layout is and so on.
Sure.
But I've got that room above where I can add things like that sometime down the road if I choose to do so. Yes.
Wow.
So I'm gonna stop sharing this here for a second. Everybody got if that's all right, if everybody's got any questions about it.
Yeah, why don't you I guess then what we'll do here is on this highly produced podcast that we're doing tonight. So Alan, just if there's any questions in the chat for Alan and on the BN, and great job, Alan, walking us through that. That was fantastic scene. But Tom Johnson, Tom J, if you wanted to take us through, and we can get you set up on some of the screen share here, and so you can bring up some pictures if you have some pictures of your layout. But there was a couple of questions out there still about fascia, and I know we're talking about fascia quite a bit, but so fascia color or fascia paint, do you guys do satin, gloss, flat paint when doing your fascia? Is there any importance there? I know I've tried flat. On my old Mascoutin Valley Railroad, I did flat black, and it got smudgy and dirty real fast. So I don't know if you guys do satin or some other type of finish on your paint.
Stain.
My fascia is plastic.
Okay.
It's just I bought it at Home Depot, and it's kind of a wood textured plastic. So
sure.
I don't paint it at all.
Tom K, what about you?
I think I use satin and then flat for the sky blue.
Sure.
So the fascia that way there you can clean it a little bit, but yeah, the flat does attract some dirt and stuff like that. But I haven't really touched up since I painted it. I haven't really had to touch it up.
Yeah, I noticed that when I have greasy meat hands and on the flat black paint, it would leave fingerprints and smudges and stuff like that. So I'd have issues there. Alan, I couldn't remember, is yours a flat or a satin finish that you have on your fascia?
It's a satin finish.
Yeah. Okay. So
I actually use stained wood. Mine's 1/4 inch by 3 inch pre-stained Menards trim.
And you have a clear coat on that, right, Mike?
I didn't do anything. It came right from Menards like this.
Oh, so it's finished.
It is absolutely finished. There it is.
Here, I'll bring it up on screen so you guys can see.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yes.
So yeah, and so because I wanted it to be part of the room.
Make it look like furniture, right?
I wanted to make the layout kind of look like a piece of furniture. Yeah.
Yes.
So, that's kind of, this is my high quality structure building right here. But
Yeah.
I mean,
nice touch with the Burlington Northern there. Alan probably appreciates that.
Yeah, I got a ton of those. But I found that this was the easiest way for me to do it without making a big mess, because you can just buy it in 8-foot lengths and then just cut the need.
Sure.
And then really it kind of goes on almost seamless. So and not only that, but you don't have to worry about supporting a lot in the back, because as you can see, my switch controller here, my little push pull knob, there's just anything I need to do to it, I can just screw right to it.
Right.
So
yeah, very good. So I guess either Tom K or Tom J, did you guys want to volunteer maybe walking through a scene or how you did scene composition on your layout?
Well, if Tom Johnson's ready, he can pull up some pictures. I've also got some pictures of Tom Johnson's layout that if he's looking for pictures, he can't post them up. I've got a folder with a bunch of his photos in there. So I'll let Tom Johnson go ahead and go, because I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say.
Well, first of all, I want to compliment Alan on his painting. I was really impressed with the backdrop painting. You know, I'm an artist and retired art teacher, and I use photo backdrops for my trees and things. Now, I did paint my sky, but I used photo backdrops from trackside scenery. Some of you might know Joey Ricard.
Yes.
The colors in those backdrops they match the modeled scenery really, really well, and I was quite impressed with them. And I found just the right things for my part of Indiana, modeling Logansport. And there's a pretty good hill when you go into Logansport, Indiana, on the north side. So I wanted to show some buildings kind of in the hill, but the rest of it's just mostly trees and some cornfields and things. But
right.
But Alan, great job on that, on the painting. I give you an A+, man. That's really good.
Thank you very much.
We're giving out grades tonight. Sweet. All right.
Really proud of that. I'm sitting there going, wow, and you just kind of taught yourself how to do this.
That was it.
Wow, that's amazing. And I tell people that You could paint. It's all about seeing things. You have to visualize. I remember telling my kids in my art class, if I don't say anything about how to draw a tree, a lot of kids will draw that typical tree with the real fat trunk and the hole in it, and the big green blob and the little red apples. But then when I tell them, I said, look out that window and really look at those trees. What do you really see? You take your eyes and train your eyes to look at what you are actually seeing. And, so, okay, now draw me a tree. And believe it or not, I got some really decent looking trees. So it can be done. Anybody can do this if you really pay attention and practice. And like you said, Bob Ross is a great teacher.
Yeah. So that's some great advice there to train your eyes to start breaking stuff down like that.
Yeah, just observe. You have to observe.
Observe.
Seeing. Yes.
Yes. That's what I'm training myself to do right now. And you see things a little differently.
Yeah.
Then and think about it.
In the eyes.
Yes.
In
Very
brain.
good.
Yeah.
So, okay. So if you wanted if you had any photos to share, sharing's fairly easy on StreamYard here. So at the bottom of the screen here on the bottom, you'll see a mute, stop cam settings, and then a share.
Share. Yes.
Yep. So you can grab a screen share there and just click that share button, and it'll ask you a bunch of questions of, what do you want to share? Do you want to share a file, pictures, yada, yada, yada. So if you have like a folder full of pics or pics that are up or a window, you can share that, and we can click right through.
I have I've got a file that says new iPhone. So would that be video file?
Let's see here. William, you're a Mac user, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. But as far as do you know the specific folder, Tom, that you want to share with us?
Yes, I have it here. It's called a new iPhone folder. It's on an external hard drive.
Okay.
Then just click that share button and go find your way to that folder, and that's the one that you're going to be able to open up and allow us to see.
So I have slides and I have video file.
Okay.
So either one?
Yeah, either one is fine. I can take both kinds here.
Okay, Google Slides. I don't want Google Slides, so it'll be video file. There we go.
Okay. And then I should get a notification here. It'll pop up.
Okay, new iPhone. Boom. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, now they don't seem to be highlighted. They're kind of dark. They're light.
They're light.
Yeah, I have canceled, but I can't open them. So
okay. Let me see here. I wonder if you could. Let's see here. Mike, do you have a couple of his pictures up that we can work with here in the meanwhile? And then let's see here. Tom, I did send you a message in Messenger. If you wanted to send them to me, just kind of drag and drop type thing, I could bring those up there as well. Okay. So this is a good point in the show here. So we got about 40, 45, 50 people in the chat tonight. If you guys haven't checked out the Second Section podcast Facebook page, I think we're up to about 200 and almost 250 members out there now. So go ahead and check that out. And that's where we get our recruits for the Broken Rail episodes or the panel episodes that we have going on this evening. Plus, there's a great community out there, people sharing all of their tips and tricks and what's on their workbench. So if you want to participate in future shows with the What's on Your Workbench, you can post that material out on the Facebook group. So let's see here. Otherwise,
I got a picture up already. I got one.
Okay, we're gonna get
set to go.
Get Mike here. Otherwise, you can send them to Mike as well, Tom, and we can get set up.
Okay,
I'm gonna use the picture that we used for the thumbnail to start out with, Tom. This is an amazing. This is actually one of my favorite scenes here. This really kind of sets a tone.
I'm gonna go ahead and expand it just a little bit so the folks there can see, and then Mike, if you want do us a favor and whoops, not that way. Let's
Jeez.
try. Just
The
zoom in just a
infinite
little
screen.
bit there so we can have Tom kind of narrate what's
Alright.
going on here with the scene. Tom J.
Okay. This this scene actually was added recently. I mean, I built the layout, and I kind of considered the layout done. But I'm at the stage now with a small layout where you can go through and you can do some tweaking here and there, is what I call it. And I decided that I needed a place for the Cass County crew to be able to have a place to do any paperwork or anything they might have. And I have several photos from Railfan safaris of a caboose that was used for a crew office. It's not a yard office. There's no yard here. It's just a little crew quarters. And some of the cabooses were left on the track. Some of them were taken off and actually taken off their trucks and set down on the side. So I had an old Blueford caboose, and I studied a lot of photos, and I saw things like an air conditioner that was attached, the power meter, and the conduit, the 200-gallon fuel oil tank. Because I'm modeling 1978, so
There we go. Okay, I was just going to ask that.
Fuel oil tanks more than your propane tanks. And on the deck on the right end, I have some trash cans, and I have some sandbags. A friend of mine who worked for a short line railroad in New Jersey said that I needed some sandbags. And then he says, but you also need a way to cover them things up, so if it rains or gets wet, you don't want them to get wet.
Yeah,
so
right.
I do have a tarp hanging over the side. You can't really see it in the photo.
Mike, can you zoom in just a hair bear there? That's an official term. There you go. Go the other way. There's on the top there. There's a plus. Maybe that's create. You don't want that.
No.
Okay. Oh, you're in just Facebook there. Never mind. So
yeah, I'm just in Facebook here.
Okay. Let's see here. That's fine. So I can essentially pick it up. On the right hand side there. There's a bit of a looks like a blue tarp, right?
Yes, it's a tarp that I made out of tissue paper.
Okay, and let's see here.
So is this kind of like a meld of a bunch of different scenes that you've seen in photos that you just kind of took pieces of everything and kind of made your own scene out of it?
Yes. I've seen the oil tank, the AC. On the porch on the left end of the transfer caboose, there's some lube oil cans and things like that. There was always one or two porta potties, and yes, these are 1978 porta potties. I couldn't use the BLMA models because they're too new, and a friend of mine found this company. I think it's called Plate C. And these are 3D printed, and they're typical of later 70s era porta potties, and some of the barrels laying around. And if you look carefully, you could see a water spigot
right here.
Right here.
Yes, and the hose coming out and going back behind the porta potties for the locomotive. And I made that out of a photo. I found some photos of the water spigot that I seen, and I reduced it down. I mean, we're talking about the size of a pencil head almost, the point of a pencil. And I laminated like 3 of them together and painted them and attached them to a pole. And then I added wire for the hose.
Holy smokes. Okay.
Wow.
So, Mike, I think I took over the screen here. I actually have an edible picture. So are you guys able to see me zooming in and zooming out on the picture in various spots?
Yeah.
Should I stop sharing then?
Yeah, why don't you stop sharing? I can take over. So let's just go back. We'll work our way back from the old Woody wagon there on the right. And let's see here. So we got the power pole here with looks like a mercury vapor light or all that stuff. And then here's what you're talking about with the power box, right? right in the center of the screen there.
Yes.
On the transfer caboose. And look at that. He's got the plumbing in there as well. That's fantastic.
Wow.
So how deep is this scene on your model railroad?
My entire layout is 16 inches deep.
Holy cow. It looks like it goes on forever.
Yeah. Yes. Unfortunately, the trees and everything blended the colors, blended in with the colors with the backdrop really well. Quite happy with that.
Oh, wow. And then, so let's see here. I have another picture here. And this is one of your road scenes and the grade crossing. So this is another one of those. It's only 16 inches deep, right?
Correct. Yes.
And it looks like it goes on forever here. So I guess let's see here. When you
Andy, I just sent you another picture he sent me.
Okay. And basically, so when you were looking at these or trying to pose this scene, you said that you basically used a photo of the of a prototype to apply here.
Yes.
Okay. And then so when you took that photo, did you try and jam it all in there, or did you have like a method to essentially setting up this scene? And we're getting some really great comments here. So David Winther says that's amazing. Roger Moses says I feel like I'm there. David Winther says, how far are the tracks away from the wall in this picture that you have here?
The track is, in fact, I'm looking at it right now. It's about 2 inches.
Wow.
And that backdrop is one of the trackside scenery backdrops. I meant to clarify that. These backdrops are like 48 and 64 inches long. They're huge. And that's the other thing I really like about them. I didn't have to piece 4x8 8.5 by 11 like I did with my own photos on my old layout back in Indiana. And for a small bedroom layout like this, I just found the perfect backdrops that he had available that worked for me, because a lot of the backdrop is actually covered with trees. I mean, I actually put trees up against the backdrop. Some of these model trees I cut in half and actually attached them to the backdrop. And then, of course, I used a lot of super tree material and things. And then you have planes and other things in front. So a lot of this backdrop is like peekaboo backdrop. You know, you look between this, you look between that, and you'll see it there. And it just kind of helps blend everything together. It works with the foreground. The background doesn't dominate anything. So,
wow, that's really incredible. Here, there's a couple of other ones here that I have. Let me see. No, we don't want that. So this is your grain elevator here, Wayne Feeds. And can you guys still see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so is this, Mike, you said you sent this one to me. Is this from the same layout?
What you're looking at right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my present layout. That's what I have.
It's ridiculously
good. In fact, you can barely see it.
Right?
Okay.
Just amazing work.
Yeah, this is.
Thank you.
It's
so.
Yeah.
One question, Tom Johnson.
Yes.
What kits did you use to build this? Because I know you use a lot of, we'll call it standard kits, and then you kit bash them or rework them into different structures. I think a lot of people would be surprised that they're not scratch built. Or did you scratch build some of these?
Most of these, believe it or not, utilize Walther's Cornerstone kits.
Wow.
I did a lot of. I used to do a lot of scratch building when I was younger, and I built a lot of laser kits. And I decided that this time I wanted to keep the hours down, keep things simple. The tall part of the elevator there is the concrete elevator is the Walther's. It's a Walther's elevator. I built it pretty much as is. The grain bin to the right is from Grain Belt Models.
Ah, yes.
and
Hashtag not sponsored.
yeah, they make the grain bins they make are just unbelievable. And it's so nice to be able to just stack the rings. You don't have to put the rings together piece by piece like
Not
you
like
do
Rick's.
some of the like Rick's or even the Walther's grain bin. And then the green building on the left is a Rick's building that I modified. And then the block building at the far left end is also part of the concrete grain elevator kit.
Oh wow.
That's the steel house.
Look at this. Okay, so what
Jeez.
okay, we got a little bit to unpack here, right? So
Okay.
this
I'm going to
this
keep
is-
sending you pictures, by the way, while you're doing that. So when you're talking to me, I'm multitasking here, so I might have to go. What'd you say?
No, this is first of all, this is fantastic. So I just wanted to kind of kick it over to our distinguished panel here. So Alan, Tom K, William, any initial thoughts or questions here on this scene before we kick it up here to some of the folks in the chat? And I myself have a handful of message or questions that I want to go through myself here. So,
Well, if I got a second here, one of the things that I really like about Tom's work is the weathering that he's done on this. I mean, the textures and the colors are just spot on with what you see. How did you reference those colors, or what did you do to get your weathering the way that you see it?
On the concrete elevator itself?
Yeah, or on any of the structures. I know you use a multi technique, but you mentioned that before in a couple other places, but maybe for the other people that haven't heard it or seen it before.
Okay. I've had lots of people comment about my grain elevator, about the cement and all that. The first thing I did was I painted the elevator with a rattle can paint from, I think it was one of the camouflage colors. It was kind of looked like an old concrete color. I think it was Rust-Oleum. I can't remember what the name of it was. But I painted the elevator first with that. And then I mixed up another shade of concrete with my enamels that I have. And I kind of went over that base with another shade and kind of mixed the two together. And then I used my oils, and I dry brushed a lot of that green, moldy stuff that you see coming down from the top roof. And a lot of my observations that I have seen in the past, that is usually caused from just a lot of years of wet moisture from rain and whatever. And I kind of tapered that off as you work down to the bottom, but also notice I've got some along the cement blocks at the bottom from the ground up. And the neat thing from here, and it was all kind of an accident, is, oils will tend to resist paint that goes over the top for a little while. And I started to put my masking tape starting at the top, and you can see the rows. I used masking tape, and I went sideways and started from the top. I worked my way down, and in each row, I just dry brushed some white oil paint on there on top of that green grunge and everything. And then I put dull coat on it, and then I sprayed over the top of that with some more white, and then I took tape and attached it to the side and then ripped the tape off. And it pulled a lot of that white paint off, allowing that dark green, ugly concrete to show through from underneath.
That's amazing.
It's I can't promise you that it will work the same way every time. I just stayed with it, and I will admit it was. This is one of the things that I would brainstorm at night and then get up the next day and go out and try it. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it worked. The Wayne Feet sign at the top, that's I got that off of Google Images, and I just printed that on a good quality photo paper and peeled the back off and sanded it down. I mean, almost tissue paper thin. And I traced a little area in pencil around the square of that in the little bottom part of the feed bag with a pencil, and then I carefully brushed on hobby tack. And I brushed it on, and before it had a chance to totally dry, I attached that photo so I could still move it around a little bit if I had to center it. And there it is. And it didn't go anywhere. The hobby tack stuff.
That's a piece of paper?
That is a piece of paper, yes. Yes.
Wow.
Amazing work.
So I got questions if no one else has any. And again, if
I gotta get my jaw off the ground.
Yeah, right. So I guess while I'm blathering on here about whatever nonsense I'm going to end up saying here, the folks in the chat, if you guys have questions for Tom Johnson and how he composed this scene, fire away, or if you have any other questions on his modeling techniques here. But I guess from my standpoint, when I look at this scene, Tom J, it looks like it looks right, so like I don't see things too cluttered. It looks like the old Midwestern feed mill where you got crud just laying around the building, the building's disheveled. It all kind of flows together. What were your thoughts when you were, like, for example, those surge bins in the back? Did you have a plan in place, or did you kind of do trial by fire by setting those back there? Because it looks like you kind of filled some of that, what I would call negative space, up with some really nice structure detail there.
Okay, well, those are more of your grain bins from grain belt models, and they're the smallest one they make. And in my photo safari trips, I found that around a lot of these elevators, they had areas where they would have a whole bunch of those little tiny grain bins, and they would be of like 10, 20, 30. And there are like 3 or 4 locations back in Indiana that I remember observing. Well, in 16 inches, I don't have enough room to have 20 or 30 of them in there. But I figured, okay, I'm going to put a row of them in there because I am modeling 1978, and my wife, I married a farmer's daughter, and I helped her dad farm quite a bit. And I remember a lot of these places had these little tiny grain bins that were just personalized for the small farmer, the farmer that only did maybe 150 acres at the most.
Oh, wow.
Back then, you had a lot of farms like that. You don't have the 2,000 plus acre farms like you have today. And everything that he brought in from the field could be put in one of these small grain bins. And then when the time was right, the price was right, then he would go and empty them. And that's where I've got the augers in the side, and just run a truck up underneath it and turn the motor on and unload that bin and take it and sell it.
Yeah. So are those, and did you say that you cut those bins in half?
No, those are full bins.
Those are full bins.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we do have a question from the chat here from Otter Creek and Rio Grande, and I don't know if you covered this to start, but do you have a prototype in mind when you do this, or do you just move the mock-ups around until it feels right?
I pretty much have in mind what I'm going to do before, and that's why I built all of these structures at my workbench, and they're all attached to like masonite bases. Mm-hmm. And I do all of the scenery, like for example, the pop machine and the weeds, the flowers, the bags, feedback, all that stuff was actually done at the workbench.
Wow!
And then I put it on the layout, and then I brought all of the other scenery up to it. This way, you could work on all 4 sides of this building at the workbench and get it all manicured, get it nice and neat. And You're not having to lean over the layout or using mirrors and everything to try to see what the backside looks like, even though most people probably would never see it. I still try to get it right. And I do all of the stuff with the workbench, so everything is nice and neat and clean. And then when I put it on the layout, I don't have to be so picky when I bring the scenery up to the building, because I just bring it up to about an inch away from the building itself. and then blend it into that scenery, and that's it.
Wow.
The masonite base also gives the building a little bit of a lift. It's up a little bit on a mound. It's not flat.
Yep.
Which makes a huge difference. It's all super glued to the masonite. I add super glue almost under all of the walls and not just sections of it. And then I attach it to the base, and that helps keep the base from warping when you add a little bit of the water and glue around the edges to hold the scenery in place. So I had no problems with the edges peeling up or anything like that.
Wow.
I like the oil stains on the scale too. Very prototypical.
Yeah.
I think I sent you a bunch of other photos. You probably should have those, I hope.
Let's take a look here. Let's see what else I have. And
I've got another. I got another one of my grain elevators there. My neighborhood grocery.
Let's see here. Here's another picture of that grain elevator, just a different perspective of it.
Yeah.
I sent you the other grain elevator just now, and the grocery store part should be there.
This one, the grocery store.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Come on now.
When I was growing up, we had a neighborhood grocery in just about every part of town. The south side, north side, east side, west side. And these lasted into the 80s. And they were a place where you could go get a bottle of pop, or, in the back of the store, they'd have a little meat counter where you can get a ring of bologna and a slice of cheese or something like that. Or,
Wow.
I've got another photo of this. I need to find it. I got a wagon full of pop bottles too. That it's the kids bring in and get the deposit where they can buy a pack of bubble gum or, several packs of bubble gum or whatever.
This is a foreground structure of the photo with the train coming through the back.
Yes,
the train valley.
Correct. The photo that you had up earlier with the locomotive, the GP7 crossing, with the flasher going and everything. This building is just to the right.
Okay.
So the street, you can see the street going back behind the building on the left there, right? Yeah. Yes. You're pointing that out. That is the street where you were looking down and seeing the locomotive at the crossing.
Wow.
So again, like a lot of childhood memories of and stuff like that go into your work then?
Yes.
Or
Yes. Oh yeah, a lot of nostalgia. Yes.
Tom, what are the vehicles that are used there?
Well, okay, the pickup truck and in fact, all three vehicles is from a company that for some reason, and we always seem to fight this in modeling. People release awesome stuff, and then for some reason they discontinue it. But all three of those vehicles are made by a company called Neo, N-E-O, Neo Models. And they are just unbelievable. Some of the best looking 60s and 70s automobiles I've ever seen. Like the two cars are Buicks. And I think one is a Riviera, and I can't remember what the other one was. And then the pickup truck is a 68. Just really nice stuff, and they quit making it. I don't know why. They make them in other scales. It seems like everybody always thinks that 1/64 scale is better and 1/32
it is. It is.
I knew I was going to get a reaction out of that.
So Joe in the chat brought up a comment here on above the Coca-Cola sign here. Are those dead leaves on the roof?
Yes.
Good
yes.
Lord.
And this looks like plywood boarded up.
Yes.
Windows.
Chipboard and plywood. I use both.
Oh
and
my gosh.
Chipboard was around in 78. I had to do a lot of research on that one because I thought, whoa, I put that chipboard in there, and then I got thinking, I don't know if that was around in 78, but it was. It was fairly good stuff. But notice behind the red vehicle there was a larger door there that I boarded up. That's regular plywood.
Yeah.
I found photos of plywood sheets on the internet and then I put them in my photo program, reduced them down, and printed them.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. So just look at this scene. There's one thing that kind of draws my attention. It's these two old boys here hanging out in front of the store.
Yeah, there's actually 4, but you can't see the other 2.
Okay. Are they behind this car over here? Or?
They're behind the gas pump and the air pump, the air thing.
Right back here.
Yeah. Now, wait, you don't want? I'm kind of wondering if that's an earlier photo, and I didn't have them in there yet, because I have other photos that of this store that I could send that shows some of the detail a little bit better. Yeah, I think they're down here near the bottom.
Okay. So
Tom, real quick, what did you use for the structure on this? Were these kits, or was this scratch built?
They were 3 Walthers Cornerstone structures. They have they produce like 4 kits. They were kind of like snap together kits, but really nice. And if you paint them and detail them and weather them and do different things to them, they're phenomenal. They just look really good. And that's what I did. I used one of them at as is. That's the middle section, and then the left and right are the same kits that I cut down and turned sideways. And I even changed the roof on the right side. I added a flat roof.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's the way you've changed it around. It's almost impossible to tell that it was a Walters kit because of the details that you've added. And also, when you composed this scene, did you have this vision in your mind and then you applied it to the layout, or how did this translate from your mind onto the layout?
It was just basically a matter of like I said, a lot of childhood memories and seeing a lot of these stores and my photo safaris, and just kind of getting an idea of how a lot of them were put together. Many of them were added onto from on one side or the other. So this was just kind of a brainstorm. It's not based off of any photo, any prototype. It's just kind of from my memory and from things that I remember seeing. And I just threw it together.
So I have one more question, Tom. So when you set these scenes up, do you specifically design them to draw an eye, or is it just Is there a focal point that I should be looking for here? I mean, I kind of see it, my eye goes somewhere, right? But do you have a process for that?
I try to use a variety of detail, but specifically detail that is prototypical and that was seen. But I try to place it all the way across the front, and I try to use colors that keep the eye moving.
Okay.
When I do a painting, you have a focal point, and you try to get the eye to move around through the painting, and then kind of come in on a focus point. But the shell sign definitely is the attention getter. I noticed that you're circling that, so you saw that too. Yep. And once you see that, and then the eye will flow to the yellows to the left,
right?
And you'll kind of flow down through the yellows in the gas pump, and then as you go through, you'll flow. There's some the Coca-Cola sign on the right side is not yellow, but it's similar color,
right?
And then there's reds that carry through the entire scene.
Yeah, with the Coca-Cola, it looks like you have a Campbell's soup sign in the window, and then that car is a shade of red as well. So there's another. I kind of called out a pro tip earlier, but this is another pro tip here on basically setting up your scene to have a couple of focal points that are really the attention getter, right?
Correct.
So like with Alan's scene there, I mean, the bridge is a huge, attention getter, and then the backdrop is a great complement to that. And I like with this scene here, and I think I got 1 or 2 more photos that I'll share here, and then we can kick it off to Tom K. But this is really good.
Before you jump away there, Andy, people have early he mentioned the Neo cars that are in the foreground.
Yes.
Tom kind of said, well, he wondered why good models disappear. And at the time these cars came out, they retailed around $40 per car. Ugh. And people might fill their pants about $40 per car. If you really want to get excited,
you say fill their pants?
Good idea, because if you want to really get excited, these cars go on eBay right now. You can type in Neo 187th scale models, and I've got sold prices, so don't get like, oh, that guy's just asking this price.
It's a bot.
That blue truck that you see sitting there, there's one that's sold for 152. There's a red one that sold for 201 with $10 shipping, 17 bids. So $40 seemed like a lot, and now it's a steal. But those cars that you've got in the foreground, they are extremely nicely done. They're resin cars. If you do see them ever at a show, pick them up. And if they're $40, drop your $40 in a heartbeat, because it's worth it for the detail.
Yeah. I can't remember what I paid for these. I didn't pay that much. They were a lot less, obviously. I got mine through...
was it American Classics or American Excellence? American Excellence.
There you go.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
That's...
I think I paid high 20s, low 30s for them, if I'm not mistaken.
You might even be lower than that, Tom, because I was with you. I bought some online on American Excellence. They did a Father's Day sale, and they are clearing them out for 40 to 50% off. And I've got some for 12 to 15 bucks. Those times have gone, but look at where the numbers are in the market for nicely detailed vehicles. You do a beautiful job with them. They're cool.
I missed out on the station wagons. Those are the ones that I've been looking for. And there was one that popped up on eBay and I missed it. And there was another one they wanted too much money for it. I just said it's not worth it. So I've been using the classic Metalworks.
Well, if you want to upgrade one, I have a few of them. Get a hold of me and we can talk.
Okay, great.
I'd be honored to have a station wagon on your railroad, so we can connect.
Okay, sounds great.
I want to give a last chance here for any comments or questions for Tom Johnson. And I apologize, we're going to run long tonight. This show has been, they typically run about 2 hours. So for any of our guests here this evening, if you got to jump off or take a break or walk around, by all means, you're not locked into the chair. At least that's not what the contract said anyway. So
mine does.
Well, yours does, Mike, but that's because you're special. And so if you got to get up, walk around, or go take a potty break or all that good stuff, feel free. But again, we're going to run long tonight. So with the section crew, I appreciate you guys staying late with us. And I just wanted to draw attention. Adam Cruz had basically a nice comment here for Tom. He said, my roommate just looked at my TV that I'm streaming to and thought it was a photograph of a real place. So I think that's really, a true compliment or testament to this scene composition. It really looks real. Well,
thank you. I apologize that I didn't have the photo set up. I didn't, like I said, I didn't realize that we were gonna share photos or anything.
Yeah.
That's my fault. I dropped the ball. I didn't let you know. I should.
No, I'll also take most of the blame on that. I should have.
My other elevator. That's the other. And you got to show them the other. I've got my third elevator too, and not that one.
Not that one. Hold on, we're having difficulties here. Let's see.
We're back to our typical production level now.
Is it this one? This one here? Do I have the right one up?
No, that's the concrete one. This one is kind of a long, narrow thing.
Hang on. This one.
There you go.
That one, yeah.
Okay.
That's gorgeous.
Got her.
Yeah. The very middle of that is a Rick's building. That is not a Rick's, American Model Builders. That's the Silex elevator.
Wow.
And then I took a second Silex elevator and used it to make the extension to the right. And then I have another kit for the store that it's kind of going off for the photo to the right. And then everything to the left side is all scratch built. The concrete, the old concrete bins with the banding around it, those are 4 Walthers farm concrete silos that I put together. And
these ones on the left.
On the left. Then I put a roof over the top. And then there's another grain belt models bin on the far end.
Tom, would you be able to kind of throw out just roughly what materials you might be using? Some people mentioned the trees and how nice they look. You kind of said integrating the colors, and that's a huge part of it to be able to see it. But what products are you using on trees or ground foam or anything like that?
Okay, a lot of my static grasses it's static grass mats from Scenic Express. I prefer them over a static grass gun because these things are mats, but you could see through them. You could tease them, pull them apart, and they're really cool, and they go down really fast. I had a lot of my grasses down on my layout in a matter of an hour. I mean, I just either use spray adhesive or smear glue around, straight glue on top of the bench work, and I lay the static grass mat on top of that, and then I sprinkle dirt into the mat and then brush it in with a brush. And then the rest of it is just adding the textures, the flowers, the details, and then that's all held in place with maximum hold hairspray.
Really?
A lot of the trees, and I'll tell you, it ain't going on. I go right over the top of it with my sweeper, and I've got the tip of my sweeper right up against it, and it doesn't suck up anything.
Wow.
A lot of the trees, I use the Scenic Express Super Trees for my thicker wooded areas. But for my standalone trees, I needed something that were much bigger. A lot of your trees in towns have huge diameter tree trunks, and they're big, tall trees. Whereas your trees in wooded areas tend to be a little bit skinnier, thinner, because you've got bunches of trees that are all competing with each other for sunlight, water, whatever. So these trees in towns tend to grow bigger. And I found a company called MBR Models. MBR, they are out of Poland. And
Wow.
they make these unbelievable handmade trees. They are incredible. I got mine for Reynolds in Chicago. I think they're a little bit hard to find right now. I think COVID kind of put a halt to their production for a while there in Poland. Again, like the Neo Models cars, these trees are not cheap. But I have a small enough layout that I could afford them. But if you have a big layout, I'm not so sure a person would want to spend the money on them. Maybe for a highlight scene here and there, but that's it.
Wow.
But they're really cool trees. The maple trees, if you look at them closely, you can't really tell in the picture here. The leaves, the leaf flake foliage, probably not that one. It'd be the one over at the far right. They actually have 5 points on them. The leaves have 5 points on them, and the oak leaves have 6 points on them. I don't know how they did that, but it's kind of a step up on the Scenic Express leaf flake foliage. So
I do have to say that Scenic Express has a lot of good products that you can choose from to scenery pop.
We've come a long ways in scenery making. I mean, I look at the scenery I did on that layout back in 1985. That was in RMC, and that was all the old ground foam stuff. And I look at it now and I go, egads, I did that, because it's,
Woodland. Yeah, well, we had Woodland Scenics kits with that white metal tree-based trunks.
Right.
Rubberized horsehair that we drug over the top of them, and
it's really easy to create really good scenes today by anybody because of people like Scenic Express and Mark Welberg.
Oh, this is the last scene here.
That's the tractor farm supply.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is another great scene here. Again, color kind of, your my instant look is to just go right to this pickup. Or is that a Jeep?
That's Jeep. A Jeep pickup. Yep.
Yeah, Jeep
Burkina's
pickup.
the company.
Yeah. And then just from there, I the DX signs, and then I flow to the right.
Yes.
But
the
that's
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. This is really, really great here with the different, I guess, like types of buildings. So you have your post, like stick structure here, and then you got a brick, and kind of bringing it all together. I like that as well. The kind of the breakup of the. It's not just all wood buildings across the way here.
And this was a block of buildings that is similar to what I remember seeing when I was young, where they were in one building and then they expanded into another and then expanded into the next one. Where they knock down walls inside and opening it up. And
Yeah, right.
the building on the right in the middle, those are Rick's kits that I had to alter and cut down a little bit. The building on the right, believe it or not, that is a Walthers Al's Victory Service gas station that I changed the entire front.
Sure. So quick. Justin has a quick question here for your layout, Tom. Do you have a signature scene, or what you would call a signature scene?
The entire layout is a signature scene. Everything. There are so many. We would have to have probably 2 more hours of time to go through and show all of these scenes that you haven't seen yet.
All right, it's a date.
and I do post a lot of these on. There's 4 Facebook shelf layout groups.
Yeah.
That I post to, and then of course I put a lot of these pictures on my own Facebook page, which is just a generic page. It's not for my railroad. It's family and everything else too. And I'm going to start a blog here shortly on MRH.
Great. Well, this has been flat out amazing. Thank you for sharing this. I do want to get to some of our other panelists here.
Yes. Yes.
So Tom K, we're gonna pass the baton over to you here, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing. And if there are any questions or comments in the chat from Tom Johnson, just keep them coming. We'll filter them in as time goes by here. But again, I do want to just as we take a little break here and get Tom K set up. I do want to do some shameless plugs here for our Facebook page. So if you haven't checked us out on the Second Sections podcast Facebook group, just come over there. It's an easy, free join. You don't have to pay anything. I mean, if you want to make no, I'm just kidding. No donation required. You just come in, join, and we'll make you part of the section crew, and you'll be able to be a part of this great community. I was told 275 members now. So great work to the crew building that up and spreading the word. So Tom K is back with us just to kind of reset with the Georgia Northeastern, Tom Klimoski, and he's going to be talking about how he did some scene composition as well. So Tom, you said you had some pictures?
Yeah, I do. Boy, thanks for leading in there, Tom. How do I follow that up?
You know what?
Wow. That's like after the guy hits a home run with the bases loaded, then I'm the next batter up, and I'm just swinging a miss.
Yeah, we
kind of patched together, but I mean, I guess it worked.
Yeah,
you're the first act after Elvis, Tom. So
yeah. So, otherwise, if you guys want, I can show you the plywood Pacific that I have going on here, just to kind of let's bring us back down a little bit.
Or I can show mine if you want. I got that's
yes. So, but I mean this scene's right up there with what Mr. Johnson has.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, covering a couple things that Tom talked about, the grass that you see here is the Hiki wild fiber grass mats.
Yes.
Those are fantastic. You just stretch them, pull them apart, stick them down, put a little bit of glue down. I do a base layer underneath them. But when I'm composing the scene, one of the things that we didn't really talk about, and I want to spend a little bit of time on it, is negative space. You say, well, what is negative space? Well, that's the areas where there's really not much happening. If you look in this photo, there's a lot of negative space. It's just some trees. There's really nothing really to catch your eye. And Tom, I think, also does a great job of that on his layout, where if you noticed in those scenes, he's got the building, but across the street is just an empty field or just a grassy lot, and it allows those scenes to really stand on their own. If you think about going to a museum and you're looking at the pictures on the wall of the art, they're not all jammed together all on this one wall. They have space between them. They have negative space. So you can look at that one photo or artwork, kind of take it in, and then move over to the next one. If you put all this stuff together, it starts getting jumbled and you really can't follow it very well. So we need to do that on our layout. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about negative space. This is the scene backed up a little bit, and it's just coming up to the bridge. And the bridge is a signature scene. Everybody's seen these pictures of my layout with the locomotive going over the bridge. But leading up to that scene, the train actually disappears behind a little grove of trees. There's a lot of texture here. And then the backdrop is very, very close. This scene here, as Tom was saying, this scene from the fascia to the backdrop is 14 inches.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the track is a little bit on an angle. There's a very slight angle to it. I know William talked about that. So that kind of gives a little bit of change to the scene. It's not running directly along the edge of the fascia. So again, we want to have a little bit more space, give a little more breathing room. And then when you're modeling the prototype, model kind of what you see. And this is the Georgia Northeastern going down the switchback to the marble industries. And if you look over here on the left-hand side, there's a bunch of discarded marble blocks. This is the stuff that's not pure marble. As they're quarrying this stuff, they take out these big chunks. And what do we do with them? Well, they dump them along the side of the railroad to kind of help hold the hill from sliding down because it's got a bunch of water. So on my layout, what did I do? Made the same thing. And if you notice here, these pieces right here are actually marble that came from the quarry. A friend of mine went on a tour, and as part of the tour, they gave him a little chunk of marble. And he asked, "Do you want it?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be fantastic." So I took the little pieces of marble and I painted them a little bit, added the drill marks that you see when they're quarrying this stuff, and then stocked them along the side of the right of way, just like you see on the prototype. And this is a little mini scene, if you will. It's not that big of a scene. It's right along the back. Again, a lot of negative space back here, the trees, the discarded marble blocks, and then a little bit of open space here that you see around where the marble loading takes place. And this is pretty compact. The photo in the back is a photo backdrop that I had and edited, and my daughter is an art person, so she was able to stitch these photos together and printed them out onto large format sheets, and I was able to cut them out and use them for photo backdrops. But like Tom said, a lot of this stuff, I spent a lot of time doing the backdrops, and then I planted trees in front of it and covered up everything that was there. So it was like, why did I spend so much time on the backdrop when it kind of gets covered over in the end? You've seen this picture before. This is the prototype Georgia Northeastern Locomotive Service Facility. So what I did was I copied it as much as I possibly could. And the key signature here is the sand tower that you see here. It's a very unique sand tower. I placed the items in the same order that you see them on the prototype photo. You've got the locomotive service facility. There's this fuel pump, tanks, and then the fuel pump, and then the sand tower. So a lot of times when people view it, you want to look at it as the way people would see the scene when they come to your layout. Actually, the way that this is set up, I have it backwards. I've actually flipped it on my layout to get it to fit. But when people come in and they see it, it looks right because they view it from the aisle side, which is where the road is. When you drive by this facility, you pass the sand tower, and then you drive. In this case, where the trees are, that's actually the aisle on my layout. I just used some trees in there for the photo. So when you see it in the same order that you see the prototype. So that's another good tip, is it doesn't have to be exactly prototypical, but you want to capture the flavor and the look or the essence of it. But it doesn't have to be board for board, window for window. Very few people are gonna realize that that's a 6/1 window, or there's 5 windows on the prototype and you put in 3 or something. But you want it to look right. You want the colors to be right. You want it to blend and try to look prototypical. Here's something else that
I love this.
People don't model very much is the boarded up depot.
Yep.
The depot there in Tate. Now this is not an exact replica of the depot. The depot is kind of in the same location, and it was boarded up, and the building is a little bit different. The design is a little bit different, but I captured the look of it because it's you can see it's kind of run down. The paint's kind of faded. You got boards over the windows. So people look at that and they go, yeah, that's the depot from tape. Well, if you look at it, it's not the exact station. This is a laser kit that looked pretty close. So that's what I went with. Maybe one day I'll get around to scratch building the station because there's really not an L&N station. Another scene here on my layout taken from a little bit different angle. I took a few different angles here to kind of illustrate some of the points that we're talking about. Yeah. Scene composition. Have the stream. This is always a difficult issue, is how do you blend a stream into the backdrop where it dead ends right here. What I did was I went and took a photo of a stream. There's an area here near my house where you drive through the stream, you ford the creek in your vehicle. And I went to the middle of the creek, stood in the middle of the creek, or got in the middle of the creek with my truck and took pictures looking upstream into where the stream kind of disappears underneath some trees. And I blended that photo. And so the line is kind of right back here. It's kind of hard to see, but the bridge kind of obstructs it. So if you get down and you look, you see the stream continue off into the backdrop, and it kind of just disappears into a black hole, which is a really difficult thing. One of the things you could do is curve the creek around to the side so that you don't have that straight 90-degree where it dies into the backdrop. But so go ahead.
I got a question in regards to the stream. So, was it a real treacherous task to go into that stream and take that picture? Was it rushing water, or was it pretty, navigable by foot?
Yeah, about 6 inches of water when you drive your vehicle through it. So it's
taking your life in your own hands.
No. It's on a hike. You drive across this stream as you go off to do a hike. About 1.5 miles down the road, so it's a gravel road. But that's one of the things when you're driving around. Look for scenes that you can incorporate into your layout and use as photo backdrops. I didn't actually go to the prototype scene because I couldn't get to this stream, and even so, could I stand in the middle of it and take a photo? So I look around as I'm driving around. I'm looking for things that will work as they blend into my layout, and I always kind of keep an eye out for what might work because I use photo backdrops. Right. So a little photo editing here, pulled the stream into some trees, and there was a combination of a couple of photos. Again, my daughter helped me out with that one. But we wanted to, again, focus on the negative space here. The stream is kind of the eye-catching part, and then on each side you just have a grove of trees. So your eye focuses and follows the stream and picks up all the details.
Yeah, the green in those trees really match extremely well with the green in your backdrop.
Yes.
Your eye flows back in through that scene.
Yes. And I tried to blend the foliage on the super trees to the tree color that's in the backdrop.
Yes, and you did that really well.
Yeah. And then the yellow house kind of stands out a little bit. And there's a little tire swing with a dead tree. So there's a lot of little details, kind of like what Tom said. With a smaller layout, you can focus on the details. Here's another issue is when you're trying to blend the track to the edge of the backdrop here, where you've got that where it just kind of dies. I usually like to leave at least 3 or 4 inches between the track center and the backdrop. So in this case, what I did was I put a little hill to raise it up a little bit, some rock cuts, and then the trees, super trees along the top, and then following Lance Menheim's suggestion, this is some scrubby sponge stuff that I cut and created like a little seed block, if you will. So that sits on top of the little ridge, and that kind of replicates the undergrowth. And I just painted it green and brown, and then sprinkled some leaf block onto it and foliage, so it kind of blocks your view through the trees. So you just see the sky as they get closer to the top. So this bottom section here is just that scrubby sponge, if you will. And Lance did an article on that a while ago. And this is the same view, but you see how the rock cut kind of ties in, and it helps ease that transition into the backdrop. And it's about 3 or 4 inches, I think, maximum from the track center to the wall here.
So a question for you with some of the actual prototypical scenes, and you referenced Lance Menheim a couple of times, and I think in one of his blog posts he and again, hashtag not sponsored, Lance does not sponsor the podcast, but he talks about cropping versus compression. And when you're setting up a scene on your model railroad, are you a fan of the compression, or are you a fan of the cropping?
I call it editing rather than cropping. So it's editing.
Okay.
You're gonna cut things out, which
Yeah.
you do when you do videos, when you're doing photos, when you're doing layouts.
Yep.
Rather than jamming everything in together where it loses its realistic look, if you will, you're better off just cutting it out. It's painful. It's hard to do that. And there were some industries that I wanted to include in my layout, but they just didn't fit. So I cut them out. You know, it ended up on the editing room floor, as they said. Some of my best work is on the floor because it never made it into the layout. But like this scene here, rather than trying to jam a couple extra houses in here, I just used some trees, and the road transitions not as nicely as Tom does on his layouts, but I pulled the road up onto the backdrop here and kind of painted it in onto the actual photo backdrop. So the road kind of continues and curves off into the trees. But doing little details and then little scenes, you know, where you see like a couple here with some dogs. There's little things for people to catch as they're looking at your layout. Because a lot of times people come to look at the layout and they're not model railroaders. They're just looking at it as a piece of artwork, which is what model railroading is. It's artwork that operates, if you will. So you want to, you know, make it look as realistic as you can. Here's another one where the road transitions from the 3D to the backdrop, and the road curves off. One of the other things that kind of is a giveaway on a model railroad is unrealistic roads. You want to make sure that your lanes are at least 12 feet wide on a standard, you know, 2-lane road. They can be wider on expressways. Little gravel roads or a single lane, you're probably talking 10 to 12 feet for each lane. But you want roads that look natural, that actually look like a car could drive on them or a truck could drive on them. So this was a photo backdrop. Actually, this photo was taken standing on the just off the grade crossing at this highway with the depot off to the left. And this is the actual prototype road that's modeled on my layout. This is a photo of the actual road heading off towards the east. So that is a prototypical road that was blended in, and it does curve off to the left on the prototype. So a little photo editing, and then the photo here, like Tom Johnson was saying, this is just printed on standard printer paper or card stock, and it dies right over here in behind the trees. So the edge is not really hidden; it's only hidden by the trees because it just is a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that's in place there.
So there's another maybe I guess mechanical piece to talk about here then, is that so you have the foreground, the midground, and the background here. Like Alan on his layout, you know, had all of those elements where, you know, they all kind of tied together with, you know, what do you see immediately in front of you from the fascia all the way back to the backdrop. Tom Johnson had the same thing as you looked into the scene. You know, you have immediately in front of you that middle piece, and then it blends into the backdrop, tying all of those elements together. I think that's one thing I do want to draw to everyone's attention is all three of these modelers tonight, you know, exhibited that methodology of tying everything together. And as Tom K goes through his backdrop discussion here on how he ties it all together, I think it's a great example of how basically the scene never ends. When you look at it, it goes from, you know, when you're standing at the edge of it all the way to the road in the background, which is really fantastic.
Yeah. And the road's never going to be perfect. This is the best angle to see where the road, and it does look like it continues off. Now, when you change your viewing angle to the left or to the right, or a little bit higher, a little bit lower, the angles don't quite work out perfectly. But you can screen that a little bit with the way that people view it by placing trees. So you're kind of forcing the viewer to look where it lines up the best. And by doing some trees in this photo, just to the right of the photo, off screen is that grove of trees that I showed you earlier, and off to the left there's also another grove of trees. So it's kind of forcing the viewer, when they look, they have to look the way I want them to look down this road, so that the road on the photo lines up with the road in the on the model.
Yes. Very good.
And then here's another one, photo backdrop here that goes in. This was taken in a location actually near my model train club. I found a spot that looked right. The road kind of disappears over a little bit of a rise here, and then some photo, and there was a lumber yard here, which is what I'm modeling to the right is the lumber yard. So the right behind the Mustang is where the photo backdrop is. And it lines up, but you can see there's a little bit of an angle issue here. And I went and shot the photo, and the first time I took it, again, very carefully, stood in the middle of the road and took the photo. When I put the photo on the backdrop, it didn't look right because my perspective when you're viewing this was standing on basically on this white line over here. So I went back and reshot the photos standing to the left of the road, and then that helped because you're always viewing this from slightly to the left. So those are little things that you don't really think about, but modeling modern day has some advantages where you can go back out and shoot photos. If you're modeling the 50s and 60s and you don't have photos, it makes it really hard to get a photo backdrop that'll work and line up and everything because you can't go back and reshoot the photo.
Or the 70s.
and again, here's a few little things here. Negative space. We talked about fields. One of the other negative spaces is parking lots. Look how much space I dedicated to the parking lot of the Dairy Queen.
Yeah,
there's
right.
a lot of parking spots. A lot of times you'll see people and they put these models together and they jam everything together, and there's no place for people to park. That helps it look more realistic. Now, I am a little tight between the right-of-way and the edge of the drive-through here. The drive-through comes around the back. So that's a little tight here, but not crazy tight, but I wish I had a little bit more space. I was pushing it to the fascia here. It'd been nice if I could have pulled this out another 2 or 3 inches at least to give me a little bit more railroad right-of-way clearance over here. But little things like, the fence around the dumpster, more parking spots, the drive-through, and the details, and negative space, another parking lot here in between the structures with the photo backdrop of the. So I'm looking at that as I'm trying to compose these scenes. The team track ramp was, again, some more negative space here, just an empty lot,
right.
Nothing real exciting there to see. Just move along, nothing here to see, and some trees, but it helps you focus on this ramp here, and then the Dairy Queen, and then your eyes focus back here where the train is, where it's running between the team track and this building back here, which I've mentioned before is no longer rail served, which is something that people don't model that often, is no longer rail served structures. I put the ties there, pulled up the rails. If you're modeling modern day, a lot of these can be bike paths.
Sure. Right.
So, and then as people work their way around the layout, I set up little small scenes where people are standing around talking, or little things for people's eye to catch as you're looking at the scene here. Just a couple of guys standing out talking about what they're going to do and composing the scene. Again, how would I see it through a camera?
Yeah, right.
And this is an example of what not to do.
A little tight there, right?
It's a little tight.
It's a little tight.
You got to be a really good truck driver to get in here to this loading dock here. The space got a little bit tighter than I would have liked. I got around that by using the shorter 20-foot containers and the smaller trucks. So that worked out, but a full-length tractor trailer would not have fit in here. So
No.
I'm a little tight on my spacing here, but think about how a real truck would get in here and try to back in and try to make this. It would be a challenge. I've seen some good truck drivers; they could do it, but it would be a little tight.
Oh, that fence is gonna get smashed.
Yeah.
If I'm driving that rig,
too.
if I'm driving that rig, that I'm doing the Austin Powers front and back, the put it in reverse,
In the hallway.
put it forward, yeah. And then I get stuck in between the building and the fence, and then I just run it over. That's how it's gonna go.
You gotta make that fence go and lean in a couple of different directions.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I should bend a couple of these vertical fence posts.
That's way too neat looking.
Hit a couple of times.
So,
Hey, Tom?
Yes.
How high up off the ground is your layout?
54 inches.
Okay, mine is 60. I was going to say, And that scene you just showed us, that is near the backdrop.
Yes.
Okay, because when you have a high layout, and yours is pretty high. I mean that's not too far from mine. You kind of have that perspective going back. If when you're looking at that from out in the aisle, you probably don't notice that scene being that narrow. Because I have one similar too. Behind my other grain elevator, I have an area behind there where the trucks will go onto the ramp and get weighed, and they check the moisture of the corn. If you would look at that from the top straight down, you would go, there ain't no way. I mean, it's just a little narrow space. But when you look at it from out here, you can't see it. You can't tell. So a lot of times you get away with stuff like that, even though your space is not big enough. Making something a little bit narrower will work. And I like that scene. I think it's perfect.
Well, there's another scene on my layout, which is the lumber yard, which again, most people have seen it, and it's a little tight between the siding and the structure itself because I built the structure and then put some lumber racks on front of it because it looked better, but it reduced the amount of space that the forklift driver has to get the lumber off that side. But like you said, it's on the back side of the car and it's in the back of the layout. So you're looking, 20 inches almost where you're standing in the aisle. You're looking back 24 inches because it's 18 inches from the fascia. And it's in kind of the back corner. So you don't really notice that that's compressed quite as much. Now the side towards the aisle has got a lot of room. So it looks right from the viewing side. But like you said, if you went back there and actually took a tape measure and measured it, it would be a little tight. But you're able to get away with that compression a little bit.
That's one thing that I wanted to bring up during this whole kind of conversation is the fact that everybody that's talking here tonight, we've all got layouts that nobody's really able to utilize that 3-foot factor. You know what I mean? That you always hear about, if it looks good from 3 feet away. Well, everybody that we're talking that's on here tonight, we have very close in layouts, very narrow layouts, shelf layouts, or regular around the scenes that we're talking about. I mean, Alan, your bridge scene, I mean, that's about as in your face as when you walk in. Is there's no doubt what that is. I mean, there's no getting away with that, and so the like you said, Tom, the use of being able to use that perspective to try to, like Thomas knows that truck isn't, there's not enough room for a truck. But when you look at it from the perspective of 15, 20 inches away at eye level, you can't tell that.
Yeah, I would have never known the difference.
Right. Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's kind of lost is the fact that everybody thinks that when you're out there modeling, you have to get like you were saying, Thomas, your roads should be 12 feet. Well, you can't always get that 12 feet some places, and you have to kind of trick the eye, especially on shorter or on smaller layouts. You have to be able to trick the eye to make it look bigger than what it actually is. And I think everybody on here tonight does a good job of doing that. And it's really been a lot of fun to watch all of this tonight. That's for sure. I've learned so much. I'm going to go to work tomorrow and I'm just going to be like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm not even going to look at the real thing the right way anymore.
Yeah, right. Right. No, that's true. Cause you've probably watched me kind of turn around and look behind me a handful of times as everyone's been talking tonight about, oh geez, I'm looking at this scene back here and I'm going, I wonder what I need to do there with my photo backdrop and tying that in. So
and William's actually in a different position than the other 5 of us.
Yeah, right.
His Hiawatha district is, William, how high is your Hiawatha district? 36 inches?
It's actually just under, just about 40.
About 40?
Oh, 40.
Yep.
So you have more of a top-down view of yours rather than what the operator does. So how are you getting around doing your stuff with the perspectives and things like that compared to like if the layout was up higher like everybody else's for the most part?
Well, I think I look at mine a lot of times as through the lens. Each of you guys can all probably look at it this way, but we look through the camera lens to enjoy the scene. I'm looking at it from an operating standpoint, so I want convenience of operators to be able to successfully uncouple cars and work from above, because that's going to be a little bit easier. But when I get to the point of the larger part of the railroad, I do have what's called the ditch, and it's going to be at eye level because that's just going to be a viewing experience. It's not going to be interactive as much. But that's why I am up higher. But I think a lot of times we do look through a lens that I'm designing mine in a way that I'm doing it more or less one-to-one. So if you're doing it one-to-one, you want to create the scenes that you're able to engage in.
Nope.
Sorry.
No,
that's all right.
That's more of our
Producer
high
error.
quality
That was
production.
this is what you get late in the show. The old boy here, he's getting tired, getting clicky. My bad.
At least it was train
I would
related.
say though, Mike, I think a lot of times, I mean, to each person, we get into the view mode, but when we do take pictures of each of us, we all take pictures of our railroad. We are way closer than we ever are when we're looking at it. So if you see a photo of something that I've taken, that model is like right here. And you'd never view that model that close, but you'd be that close because that's what the camera gets at that close. So in, Tom Johnson, your detail that's there, it's insane how much detail you put into a scene. So when you take a photo up close like that, the person can dance around and start to pick it apart and really look at all the details.
Yeah.
So William, you've got quite a bit of photography experience and the graphic design piece. So this is almost like a day-to-day type thing. And you sent over a bunch of pictures that essentially are your thumbnails to your videos, correct?
Right. And that was just kind of, I mean, you can randomly look at even some of the ones that might be in the mix. But it really comes down to just kind of how you look at your railroad. And that's just some examples I sent to you.
Yeah. So why don't, and again, the producer will have to really, I think he's an intern. That
the new guy that just keeps coming back.
Yeah. The new guy that keeps coming back. So there's a couple of them that are
the intern community.
Yeah. To the intern community here. So this one's a thumbnail that you have here of a station scene.
No, this is actually Gary Friesman. He does the Arkwood and Rice Creek. He's in Mahtomedi, Minnesota. And when I work at somebody's railroad or I'm operating, I get into the scene. So this just happens to be his St. Paul Union Depot. And he happens to have some of the container traffic that's stored in there. I thought, man, the detail and the people in the scene, that's what really kind of sets this particular area. Now, the headlight in the distance is obviously added in later, as is the background. But I use photo stacking. So if you're developing and creating a scene, you hold the camera up there. This one I use Camera Pixels is the name of the app. And it will stack photos for you. And then you can put it into another software. And even Photoshop, I think, will stack photos for you. But that gives you that full depth of field. So when you're looking at a photo like this, I'm looking at this as my vanishing point is out where the locomotive is. That's the headlight. All the people are waiting. We're going to assume that's a passenger train because these people are ready to hop aboard. But creating your visual scene, and again, normally you'd never be this close on a person's railroad, but our phones are so small that you can slide them right up in there and get into the scene and kind of experience what you see here.
Yeah, this one came like right away. This platform scene kind of picked up, and you can see the concrete there. That's kind of got a neat little, almost like it's chewed up a little bit, like you would see on the edge of a platform. I thought this scene was really, really neat.
Now that's on my dad's railroad. It's not an overly fancy Athearn cab over, just a C-series cab over. But the fence I did was learned from Luke Towan. It was just a detail. That's wedding veil material, sprayed silver after soldering together a bunch of the pieces. But overall, again, we're looking at composition. The freight car isn't the star of the show. It ends up kind of being this truck. The truck would probably be a little bit nicer detailed in terms of where my standards might be at now. But this shot was a number of years ago. and it kind of sets the scene just as far as I'm learning the process of kind of setting up the way I wanted something to look. The elevator in the background is the elevator that is on the railroad, but by perspective, we're a little bit off just because of kind of how the camera is turned or twisted, but it still tells you the story that, you know, the freight car doesn't have to be the star of your photo when you go to take one.
Right. Right.
And William, just to piggyback on that, anybody that wants to know, that's called tulle, that wedding veil material. You can get it at like Hobby Lobby, Michael's, all that stuff. It is cheap. I mean, I think I've got a 1 foot wide by 3 foot long piece, and it was like 25 cents. It is inexpensive.
Now I'm gonna be a tool snob on you on this one, Mike.
Oh boy.
But the wedding veil material was finer than the tool material that you could buy on the roll. Just in this application. So I was looking at the tool and I had it held out, and the actual openings are smaller on the wedding veil, which
really?
That seems weird, but you are right. You're going to get close just using the tool. But in that application of the one Andy showed, that happened to be the actual, I cut up an actual wedding veil. I don't know if that's a cardinal sin or what might happen.
Does your wife know? Does your wife know that you did that?
Well, it wasn't her veil. It was some prospect in the future.
I was waiting for the comment that I was a tool, but we'll just move on.
Now, what we're looking at on this one, this is a scale car. There's a Scott Thompson book, I believe it's volume 3, that covers the Great Northern scale car. Now, as I said before, normally not having the freight car as the center of attention, but I was trying to replicate a prototype photo, and to get this close and to get this kind of compression, what you want to do is zoom in. Our cameras are capable of very nice widescreen or wide angle rather views. And when we get close to the subject, that wide angle distorts stuff. So what you want to do is get away from the model, zoom in, and that also helps you a little bit on your depth of field. So this is obviously a freight car is only 1 track away, which is less than 1.5 inches away subject wise, but you're getting at least that compression and you're trying to replicate the prototype. And that's what I was doing. And the lighting here is 1 bulb. So we often have our track lighting or multiple lights. This is a shop light. It's I think it's 10,000 lumens. So it's basically your utility light that you might use for doing a construction project, but it's 1 light from above and it's direct lit. So I don't scrim, I don't soften the light. It's just the hard light because the sun normally is going to give you these harsh shadows. And that's how you're able to achieve that.
William, is that a camera phone or is that a SLR?
All these are camera phone. So these are all iPhone, and
wow.
I don't use I have a DSLR Canon Mark III, and I use that for work. And with that, it's more work to pull that out and go through the whole process to set up the lighting and everything the way I want it. And this is just a quick, cheap and dirty way to do it. And it again is just with the cell phone.
Wow. Look at the MN&S logo on the back. That is really.
Now you're getting cool. The sharpness out of those from the stacking ability. Mm-hmm. So to stack, this one was 2 photos. It was basically the Great Northern car was sharp. It's a little soft on the rail across the top. And then the M&S was obviously sharp in the background. But the decal that's in the background on the M&S, when I do is I actually paint the diamond. I go to lay it down. I put my Solvaset on the actual piece of metal first and then lay it down on top of it. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad way to do it, but it helped suck the edges around with the material that came around. So it wrapped around the metal and didn't, I guess that's just the best way I can explain it.
And I do that a lot. Putting the Solvaset down first and laying the decal in it. Yes.
So this, this was. Did you do focus stacking here as well, William?
Yeah, it's 2 photos. So it's 2. It's a sharp photo of the M&S and a sharp photo of the hopper car, and those are the 2 that they merge together to keep everything sharp.
Yeah. So you can see like the lettering on the scale car is legible, as well as the the road marks on the M&S car in the back, which are, I think that's for me, that shows that you get that real nice transition between what's in the foreground and what's in the background.
And in both of these cases, they're custom decals that Bill Brillinger did of PDC. I think he's out of Canada. But he did the custom decals for me, but I did all the artwork. So I got exactly what I wanted to match the exact car. So that air slide in the background, as well as the scale car, have all the weird fine type that we'd normally expect out of our tangent models. But both of those are custom painted.
Wow.
Those decals look really good. I had some custom decals made by a person, and they were okay, but they showed a lot of pixelation, especially in colors that were odd colors like maroon or something like that. Those decals look really sharp and opaque.
And that's the thing, is sharpness. I think Bill does a really nice job making sure, as a graphic designer, I have high expectations of how stroke widths are and the actual structure of the lettering. So sometimes they can kind of meld together, and Circus City does a very nice job as well. But sharpness was really what drew me in on those particular decals. Now, this one here is a shot that's on my dad's railroad. As Tom kind of had alluded to, just taking a random shot in different areas. This is a very commonly viewed spot on the railroad, but if you pulled away from this scene, there's actually a lot going on. I really wanted to isolate it, so when you're taking photos and you want to try to really kind of limit the stuff that's in an image, is get rid of all the distractions. And in this case, obviously the locomotive is kind of your front and center, but any of the little odds and ends and details. Now, we don't have ballast down. We haven't gotten to that point in this particular area on the railroad, but those little elements that you see in a scene, like Tom's, he's got so much going on. This one here, the actor is the locomotive and maybe even the crew member, but there's not a whole lot to really explain or get into. I like getting into Tom's photos because you can sit and look at all the little tiny intricacies, and I think that's what's kind of neat about it.
See, do you have one, William, that you want me to kind of look at here? Otherwise, I'm just going to cycle through them.
No, you can kind of jump around. I just wanted to give a couple of very basic things for guys that are trying to take...
one. This is one of my favorites.
I was going to say, do the one with
I know which one you're doing. I knew it. I knew it. Yes.
Yeah, I love this one.
Awesome.
So now this is actually a Vern Wigfield photo that I based it off of. This is my model, but Vern Wigfield had a photo of this truck, and I thought to myself, I want to create that particular truck exactly the way it was. And this model itself, it was a cast by Greg Dixon. He's on the 187 scale, just 187 scale vehicle group. And I says, anybody got a cab that's close to this? The prototype is a GMC. This is a Chevy. I mean, it's a horse apiece. They're both very similar. But the detail then, when you're looking at this as a modeler, I found my M&S car, the all-door that's in the background, and I matched it to the prototype. Then the ACFX car that's in the background, again, I tried to match it to the prototype. The flat car number 710 that's back there, that was a model that I had done. This whole scene was created from a prototype photo that Vern had. And that, to me, from an inspiration standpoint, is where we can all pull in all those little details. And, of course, depth of field comes into play here. So when you're looking at these, this one's stacked, and I think it's about 4 or 5 photos, because to get the sharpness from the front of the vehicle all the way back to the ACFX, to be able to stack those together using the camera pixels, that's what helps create this illusion that it's more prototype than it is a model.
Yeah. This was one of my favorite. So I'm going to give you a plug.
Outstanding.
I'm going to give you a plug for your video series, William. This was one of my favorite video series to essentially follow along on, was the build of this truck. I don't know why. I think I have a personal connection to it. When I was a high schooler, I drove a old Chevy, that grain truck that had an Omaha Standard box on the back, so
Sure.
And I remember Novembers and early Decembers, the heater never worked, and it was a 4-speed, and it was slow, and oh my God. And I remember just sitting in the cab, and I think that's what, for me, that was I made a connection to it. I love that series. And I love these old Chevy what are they? The C60.
Well, they're kind of utilitarian.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of times in Tom Johnson, you can even speak to the textures that you look at. As an artist, I look at it and say, there's a lot of wear and tear on a vehicle, and you know that things get dirty, gritty, and grimy. The trailer that's actually in the background is too clean, too bright to me. I would probably say I'd omit it, but in the prototype photo, there's another yellow trailer that happened to be in the background. But it's speaking to kind of those textures, the layering. The board that's on there is actually a piece of wood that's stained, and then kind of take a razor blade to it and scrape off a little bit to try to give it a look.
Yeah.
To look a little bit more like natural wood.
William, was this shot outside or was this shot inside with lighting?
No, inside with lighting. So it's the exact same technique I mentioned before using. This is just a Menards shop light. It's a bright LED, but it's a single LED. Not to be confused with if you have an LED that has, we'll just say 40 little tiny LEDs that make up the light source, you're going to get a lot of little cast shadows. So this chip on this particular shop light is about a 1 inch by 1 inch square, and it is a single light source that gives you a hard, crisp light, and that'll give you those shadows.
Almost see it there.
The
in
color of the
there.
light is
Perfect
for
it's daylight.
I mean, it's the shadows and everything else is what really makes it stand out.
Yeah, the wheel, the tires, and I mean that's the part I keep looking at. The color. I mean, you nailed it on those. Jeez, the tires, the rims, and everything.
Well, and you know how a tire will even catch the curb and it'll rub. You get a little bit of that kind of flavor to it.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah, those little things to me, I like vehicles. I like dialing into it. You know, hence the Neo ones that you've got on yours, Tom. That's actually what turned me on to Neo, was seeing photos that Tom Johnson had of his railroad. He had those trucks way back when, and I thought, wow, those are cool. So I started seeking them out and eventually came across them, and I've enjoyed them ever since. So Andy, if you go up, there's actually the M&S box car. So go down a little bit, your other down. So it's going to be the M&S box car with the
my military down.
SW.
Yeah, which one?
That one right there. Yep.
This one or this one?
Either that one to the left, preferably.
Left one. Okay.
Yep.
My military left.
When you look at this, so these are the vehicles that are in the foreground. This isn't the actual shot I was looking for in my head, but think foreground, middle ground, background. Now foreground, you notice the vehicles. They're pretty obvious. Middle ground, normally you'd say that your terrain is going to be what is the focal point, but then you can also look to your background or the van that's way back there and see that there is more to a scene than always focusing just on our freight cars or just on our locomotives and tell a little bit of a story.
Yes.
But keeping those type of things in mind, to me, that's where the flavor starts to kind of come in, is to be able to integrate the vehicle world I like. So details on your vehicles that you can do it are very simple. License plates. You put license plates on your vehicles. That's a simple way to be able to dress up the look of an automobile.
I've got 1978 Indiana plates on my vehicles.
See, that's even better. When you dial, I've got my Minnesota 19. I have basically 1970 for my dad, and I have 1985 for mine. And I've got it down to the tabs. So the tabs are the color that were right for that year. And
the registration tabs?
Yeah, it's taken it a little bit too far.
So I have a question, and I apologize for our folks that are still online here, but I do want to ask a question. So William, you brought up the topic of story, right? And with the panel that we have here, do you intentionally build up a story when you're composing a scene, or is it just kind of, well, the story kind of fits in after the scene gets put together in my head? So I'm kind of curious as to what each of you have to say on this.
Can I start?
Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
Okay. I had everything specifically in mind when I built my railroad, what I wanted to do, because I know that the pictures of my railroad that were being used here, a lot of it were non-railroad related buildings, like the neighborhood grocery store And you know, I actually do have a railroad, in case anybody's wondering. I mean, it's only 6 switches, believe it or not. But you know, there's enough that I could operate it for about an hour or more when I want to. But there's more to the railroad than just the train and the tracks. And I try to convince people that you're trying to convey of a total feeling, an era. What year are you modeling, and what are the things that you are going to see during that year? What time of year are you modeling? If you're modeling in the fall, what kind of things are you going to see? So there are so many parts of your layout that you detail and build that convey that feeling of what the era is and what the time of year is and so forth. And like my layout back in Indiana, I modeled October. So, you know, I had the pumpkins at the one country store. I had the corn stalks.
Yeah.
You know, some of those things where this layout's more in late summer, early fall, September to be exact. So the details are different. But in 1978, you have certain kinds of pop machines. You have certain kinds of gas pumps, certain kinds of vehicles, signage. I mean, there's a lot of things that tell you what the year is and what the time of year is.
Wow.
That's my take.
Tom K. or Alan or William?
Yeah, well, I looked for little stories, but exactly what Tom is saying, you want everything to be cohesive. So, you know, keeping the vehicles correct for the time period, keeping the signs and the houses and that kind of stuff is important. But you know, like I said, I set up little venues inside the different scenes just for people to pick up on little details. I don't know that I necessarily planned them from the beginning, but it was as things came along in my mind, I kind of like telling a story. Just like with the videos, I like telling a story of what the crew is doing. So the railroad tells a story, or the little sections, like the picture I showed earlier where you have the 2 guys talking. You can kind of, you know, that's an everyday scene where the supervisor is talking to one of the workers or that kind of stuff. It just little daily scenes that you see, nothing, you know, extravagant, but something that you would expect to see. You know, people working and doing different things. That's kind of what I look at.
Yeah.
I would say that I haven't gotten to the point of getting to that detail yet. I'm still kind of at the 1,000-foot level, trying to get, you know, scenery in a non-populated area done. And as I work towards the areas that I'll have more buildings, you know, having sat in on this, I've gained a lot of ideas about what I need to. So I appreciate that. The work that all 3 of you have done has been eye-opening to me and inspiring to me. I really, I'm glad I participated.
Well, you know, Alan, what you're doing is a good thing, because I think we all, you know, like on my layout, I just try to get the basics in first. You know, the basic grass, the trees, the basics. And you have a larger railroad, and you're working hard at getting all the basics in there. And you know, you're going to get to that point where the fun begins. You're going to have the basics done. Now you can go around and start tweaking the scenes here and there and adding the detail and doing all those fun things, and take your time, you know, doing it, just having fun. You know, you dream this stuff up and think about it from day to day.
Yeah.
When I would agree that ends up being, in your case, Alan, I see it as it's the rough sketch that starts to get laid down.
Yeah.
You're getting your sketch down that eventually gets refined. I find myself a lot of times, if you get too mired in the details, you start to forget a little bit more about the big picture. And I really like your approach, just even on your bridge, when you walk through that.
Yeah.
I agree.
How you built it up, and you
absolutely.
talked about your river and redoing it. You redid your river because you didn't like it the first time. Well, I'll admit that there's a lot of stuff that I'll do and then redo and then redo and then redo it again until it gets right. And actually that redoing process has added so many different layers that you gain texture from the redundancies and the changes that you might have made.
Yeah. You guys would laugh at me if you knew how many times I put a tree in here and there, and then I took it out. Then I put it back in, and then just in the last 3 days, I took them out again. I don't know. I just sometimes feel like you could go overboard a little bit too.
Yeah, I'm struggling with the same thing here. There's a tree I just don't like where it's set, and I'm pulling it out, putting it back, and
Yeah.
But Alan, I'll let you in the audience in a little secret here. That's why I started the podcast, was to get all these other modelers on here so I could get ideas and help me make my railroad better.
So you didn't have to
hijacking.
think. So you didn't
It's
think,
working.
have to think
It's
so
working.
much.
So,
Well,
yeah.
here, like what we were talking just about right just now about creating the scene and going through the basics. I'm just going to share real quick what my little thing here that I just got done starting to work on. This is actually a prototype photo of the canning loadout that I'm going to have on my layout. I used to switch this place. It's in Shawnee, Wisconsin. This is it. One car and a truck deal. So I went and I made this, and I believe there's a couple other shots here. It's just a real basic little industry. That's all there is to it. So my version of this, not the cardboard box, but that's just a mock-up, obviously.
Really good.
But this is my version of it. I only have it's right on a corner, or right at the beginning of a corner here, so it obstructs. Like, this goes around the corner, obviously. Sorry for the bad angle there, but I put this on an angle so that way I could better accommodate the use of using these two tracks here and getting the industry in that I want with the single car. And it'll work. It'll give me the feel and the function of the basic feel of that. Now, my plan is to go through and do the interior of this, and because it's right on the edge of the layout. Whereas, that's one thing we never talked about, is doing like layout edge buildings and stuff. That could be a whole different show.
Mhm.
But the whole point of it is what I'm trying to say is I'm just starting at this point to get the basic feel for if this is the way I want this scene to even look. You know what I mean? So everybody starts at different points with whatever it is that they're doing. I'm pretty sure Tom's stuff didn't come out of, it didn't just come out of the out of his paintbrush looking exactly the way all those buildings. I mean, how much trial and error did you go through, Tom J, to before you actually? Do you have a box full of failures, I guess, is what I'm kind of saying?
Oh yeah. Yeah. But the thing that I learned in the later years is I kind of have this philosophy now that there's no such thing as a failure. You just keep doing it until it gets right. and it's just like that elevator that I pointed out. When I started working out on it, I had no idea where it was going to go. And my first attempt at getting that peeled paint on the side and that look that I got on that concrete elevator, I wasn't happy. And I kept working at it. I got my airbrush out, like I said, and I airbrushed more concrete over it, and then I taped it, and I dry brushed the oil paint, and then I airbrushed oil paint, and I took the tape and peeled it off, and boom, there it was. And then, I still wasn't real happy, so I went back over it and did more dry brushing with my oils to blend everything in. But yeah, early on, I actually threw some stuff away, and I can remember a couple of times getting so upset that I actually wall bashed them.
Oh no! No.
But not to be confused with the wall bash.
No, that's kind of the other old school version of delete.
Yeah,
that is an old school version.
And a lot of times we're working on this stuff. I'm working on this stuff like at 1 o'clock in the morning when I should just be going to bed. I'm tired.
Yeah.
And naturally at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning is when everything starts going wrong. Things are falling on the floor, and I'm on my hands and knees looking for it in this carpet. And things flying out of your hand, and I'm instead of just, I should just stop and go to bed, and I keep at it, and things get worse, and I get upset, and I get stressed,
Well, the walkaway is actually, that's a good lesson in itself, like you said, because we've all been there. I think everybody nodded when you said that.
Yeah, we've all been there. We're all
If
human.
you walk away and you come back, it might be a decoder programming, it might be scenery, and then you come back the next day and you take care of it in like 5 minutes instead of fiddling with it for an hour.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And then, you go to bed at night and you lay there and you kind of brainstorm all this stuff a little bit. That helps too.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Well, one thing to touch on before we wrap up here was Mike was showing, for anybody that's listening that didn't see what he had shown, he did a mock-up or a cutaway that you could see the inside of what will be a future building. And the nice thing there, Mike, was that you're going to be able to tell a story beyond the rails, where a car comes up there, delivers the cars. And I know it's a canning company, you said, but whatever you do on that interior brings in another scene that is off the rail that's going to go to truck, which is a neat little integration where it was a car served, and then that you have a 40-foot trailer taking it out, but that little bit of a vignette to be able to look inside of. I guess it would be Tom Johnson, Alan, or even Klimoski, do you guys have like that cutaway vignette approach that Mike was kind of referencing?
No, I don't.
No, I don't. But I like what he's doing, because I know he's also doing that with an engine house that we've talked about in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really cool. If I had something on the edge of the layout, I think I would do it exactly the way he's doing it, because I think we've seen some photos of guys that have buildings right on the edge of their layout, and they bring the fascia up, and cover it. And I'm not so sure I'm a fan of that. I would rather just see the inside of the building there on the edge.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And one of the things I wanted to do originally was my grain elevator was going to be right on the edge, but there was no way I was going to try to do the interior of a grain elevator.
Oh, that would be fun.
That would be. It could probably be done, but I'm like, holy cow, that would be such a massive undertaking. But I have vivid memories of what the inside of that building looked like. And, you're talking about negative space, Thomas Klimoski, you were talking about negative space before. That's what the entire interior of that building basically was. All I can remember is there was a small little desk right by the rail door, and then another small little desk by the truck door. And that was it. And a couple of pallets and a forklift. That was all that was inside that building. And it was literally direct from truck to car. It was just one over to the next. And there was not any extra storage available in there. And so I guess I never really thought of negative space on the inside of a building, but I guess it's kind of what a warehouse is, isn't it? It's part empty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
I think some people are liking my word Wabash.
I think that's going to be an icon of the podcast going forward is hashtag Wabash.
I had a friend that did that a lot. He Wabashed a lot, and we always used to tease him because he actually Wabashed a brass locomotive once he got so frustrated.
Ooh.
And we never let him live that one down. But no, I haven't done it that often. But there was that one time I think I remember doing something like that. Yeah.
If he wall bashed a brass locomotive, would that have been the Dent Central?
There you go.
No.
Oh. That's officially derailed.
Yep. We've broken the rail tonight, folks. That's it. The rail's been broke.
Oh, car's on the ground.
We're on the ground. So before we digress into something even funnier or even better radio, I guess maybe what we'll do is we'll get ready to tie up for tonight. But so a lot of great topics here discussed, and there was a very wide range of techniques discussed on how some of these modelers essentially put together a scene, and I thought it was really great for all of them to come on tonight and share their experience with us, and then also give us the tips and techniques. So before we wrap up tonight, I see we still have about 20 stragglers left in the chat. as we go on almost a 3-hour marathon here, 3-hour tour. If there's any questions that you guys have for the panel, get them out in the chat right now. We'll as we start to wind down here, just get them out there so we can ask them before we wrap up. But I do want to kind of go around the room now and just some final thoughts, some big takeaways. If you were to leave some advice for some of our listeners and viewers out there, when it comes to composing a scene, what would you leave with our audience about just one big takeaway? So, Tom Klimoski, we'll start with you. I'm just looking at my Hollywood squares here, and I'm just picking. So, why don't we start with you, Tom K? About if you were to impose or impart one little bit of wisdom, what would that be?
Probably negative space. It doesn't
Negative
just
space.
happen. Yeah, you've got to plan for it. Just like you plan where a structure goes, you need to plan for negative space.
Okay. What about you, William? I know we talked quite a bit about setting up shots and photography, but in terms of composing a scene, what would you impart upon our audience this evening?
I think it ends up being that originally I mentioned the rule of thirds or composition, really taking into account what you're seeing, whether it's foreground, middle ground, background, or that cutting up a shot into 9 little cubes and then looking at little scenes or vignettes within. Because as you watched Tom Johnson's photos, even Tom Klimoski, when he was sharing his, you could see the rule of thirds happening, whether these guys were intentionally doing it or when you look at a photo through your camera and say, boy, that looks neat, or that's a cool angle. Those things are happening and you may not even realize it, but really kind of break down the scene or what you're looking at to kind of tell a story, to make it more visually interesting. And sometimes it might even just be adding little people to be able to add something that tells a story for guys.
Yeah. How about you, Alan?
I think for me, I mentioned earlier, it's color and texture. If you get the colors right and the textures are right, and we saw it in a lot of the photos tonight on the different textures of the scenery, whether it's foreground or background or the trees. If you get that right, I think that helps with your scene.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And then Tom Johnson.
I'll tell you, the other three just took everything right out of my mouth.
That's it. That's all we got.
Seriously, when you're building your railroad and you're building these little scenes to tell the era and the time of year or whatever, my advice is to look around at what you are really seeing out there in the real world. A lot of modelers tend to make up things. They put things on their layout that maybe shouldn't be there or wasn't there, and it's just like my comparison to kids in my classroom drawing a tree. They have this thing in their mind that a tree is just this big plumpy round trunk with a hole in it and a bunch of red apples. You need to look at what you're seeing carefully. I've had a couple of guys tease me a lot because, I've got a few pop machines on my layout. Well, you know what? If you look around, there are 2 or 3 pop machines in front of multiple places. In fact, one place that I remember in my hometown, there were gas stations all 4 corners that had multiple pop machines. So they were out there. In the 70s, maybe only 2 or 3, but today I know of a place that has 10. Of course, some of those are juice machines and different things that you have today. So pay attention to what's out there. Model what you see. Don't make things up. Model what you see and what you could back up if somebody looks at your railroad and they start seeing something. I remember that, or that would be my advice. Pay attention to the real world.
So that's four pro tips right there from our panel this evening. Mike,
my head hurts.
Yeah, my head hurts. Right. So just kind of you shared a unique angle on some things tonight. So maybe do you have anything to, I guess, leave with our audience this evening before we tie down?
Well, I guess for me personally, I kind of like if you have a smaller layout or a small or a structure that needs to come towards the edge of a layout, don't be afraid to try to build the interior of that, because that like William was saying earlier, that really can also tell a story. You know, you can really kind of get a what do they call that? Look through the looking glass type of thing, or what do they call that? To see exactly what is going on behind the scenes of the railroad. I mean, we're building model railroads, but the industries and the structures, those aren't just there. You know, there's supposedly, quote unquote, you know, people there, and people make the railroads go, and people make the industries go. So it's okay to model those things,
right?
You know, and you know, and don't be afraid to try it. I mean, it's you know, it's I guess that would be my thing.
And I'll just yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Well, just real quick, the other neat thing about doing that is being able to take some awesome photographs of the looking through the inside through the windows to the outside world.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's framing like you did in Tom. Tom showed earlier the shot of that GP in the distance. He's framing it with trees. He's framing it with buildings. He's framing it. And in Mike's case, he could be framing it right through the door of a canning facility.
Yes.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And I guess I'll jump in with what I've learned tonight is that, you know, from all the modelers that we're talking here, you know, they didn't get it on the first try. Right. So, you know, this was a process, right? So the thing that I want to, I guess, impart with the audience that's still hanging on or is listening to the audio feed on this was not the first, you know, they didn't get it on the first try. It was a process where they went and they tried and, you know, tried different things, putting different buildings in different locations. I know Alan talked about, you know, redoing a handful of components to his scene, you know, on the river and the bridge, and you know, and then you know, with Tom Johnson talking about Wabash, and you know, having to I guess manually delete a few things. But I think that's the big thing, is it's almost like a trial and error type process where you may have it in your mind's eye right, but when you actually set it down on the layout, it may not look exactly right. So
are we ready for the short line of the show yet?
Yeah, I think it's time. We're going to roll right into what's on your work. Whoa, wait. No. So this was again a 3-hour contest here. I do want to just send a thanks out to the folks in the chat. We carried about 20 of us all night, and I do want to thank Alan, William, Tom Johnson, and Tom Klimoski for joining us. If you guys make sure you check out the replay and check out our Facebook group at Second Section Podcast, and join the fun over there too, because the party keeps going after the podcast with discussion in the community. So again, I appreciate everyone. Mike, do you got any final words before we shut her down for tonight?
I just want to thank everybody for coming on. This is probably one of the best forums I've ever been a part of, and just so informational. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I appreciate it. We'll have to do this again. Definitely have to get this group back together with a different topic.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. So, all right, gang, we're gonna tie down for tonight. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Night.